Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 491. With the epic fetters of Spirit Network, Link has recently focused on remote micro-operations. The story of Dragon City in the past few days is simply wonderful. Since the last time the youngest Mr. Sankong sent him a preliminary report and the fetters solved the big trouble of real-time communication, Link's perspective has shifted from Asia in the south to Dragon City in the northeast. At this moment in his previous life, Link had just discovered the underground tunnels of the Howling Castle. With this discovery, he began to move and clean monsters, and began to indulge in the journey of making money. Therefore, I didn't pay too much attention to the structure of Dragon City, just knew a few important NPCs in Dragon City. Now there is a monster security company rooted in Dragon City, and the voice worms actively report on the situation in the chat group every day, and because the monster security company is taking the upper-level high-end route, the information obtained is also very valuable. According to these sorted information, a diagram of Dragon City's upper-level power relationship gradually appeared in front of Link. Through sorting out these relationships, Link and think tanks worked out strategies to draw some to suppress some, support those pro-Shadow factions, and suppress factions that dissent to Shadow. Half a month after the completion of the three branches, there were frequent successes. Although Longcheng has many factions, in short, it is still Su Tianzhao and Su's family. Dragon City fights against the tide of beasts. It can be described as building the country by martial arts. Martial arts are prosperous, and there are many martial arts habits, and they pay attention to one order and prohibition. Under the leadership of the new Earl Simon, the Hidden League shined in the Blood Banquet, and was recognized and valued by the Blood. Regarding the Dragon City forces, although the investigation has clearly revealed the relationships and contradictions between the major forces, and some forces have secretly sent off, Mr. Kong did not rush to choose, but continued to observe the situation. Regarding the company's business of monster security, I don't know if it was because of Su Tianzhao's instruction that it was extremely difficult. Many big powers are willing to buy, but there is an unspeakable conceal in the words. In the private sector, the security three-piece set, which was renamed Auspicious Three Treasures, has been sold hotly. Any family or mansion with a little bit of reputation in Longcheng will buy one or two to show their status. On Fei, the situation was just the opposite. Ordinary people don't have a good opinion of this thing. Instead, various elite families and forces in the upper class crazily pursue pets from Shadow. The success of Steppenwolves seems to have made monster security the focus of the Free Federation. The Steppenwolves bought by Fei, in addition to the formation of a normal wolf cavalry unit, there are also a good part of it by the head of state Augustine to subordinates and power families. These princes and ministers are all proud of being rewarded by Steppenwolves, even to the point of setting up a banquet and inviting friends and relatives to share. In addition to Steppenwolf, Monster Security's three auspicious treasures, pet hamsters, and fragrant pig banquets are all highly sought after by the upper class, even crazier than the upper class of Shadow. Even to the point where it is hard to find a pet, it can be said that it is completely lying down and making money. Let's put it this way, in just half a month, many upper-class families in Fei have even reached the level of contribution to the purchase of the second-stage product Invisible Killer Bee. It is precisely because of this madness that he has earned tens of millions of wasteland coins for sand. Mr. Gui saved the normal operating expenses, and all the rest was exchanged for supplies. At this moment, he is slowly driving out of the train station of Fei and transported to Shadow. Old Turtle knows that there are other people's labor, and Shadow is not short of money. In the Waste Saturn, resources are always scarce. While the Monster Security Company of Scattered Lands has made little progress in terms of sales, but under the leadership of Alan, it has unexpectedly developed religion. A group of witch doctor shamans gathered in Scattered Lands, unintentionally planting willows. And Link's order is that the next step is to seamlessly integrate the witch doctor shaman doctrine with the pets of the Monster Security Company, and learn some druid sects about the essence of man and nature, and develop the witch doctor shamans on the basis, it is sold as a set with pets to improve the effect. After listening to the report in the monster chat group and giving instructions, Link withdrew from the mental connection, and then took a long breath. Although 10 days have passed, he still hasn't fully adapted to Spirit Network. Every day, they enter the group on time and wait for the report of the sound bugs, but at the hour, these sound bugs will whistle a mouth to express their admiration for Link. And Link also found that since they went outside, these sound bugs have also learned a lot of local proverbs. In short, I will report on time at 10 o'clock every morning, and the group will hear various accents and flattering words from Shadow, Dragon City, Fae, and scattered places. The whole Link has a kind of English listening regularly every morning. Feel. Relying on the reputation of Steppenwolf and the Monster Security Company, Link's infection plan is progressing steadily and orderly, even faster than he expected. At this speed, I believe it won't take long to win over and control a group of forces. In Link's idea, as long as he controls certain forces, and then has some neutral forces, then launches a coup against Dragon City and Shadow and kills those in power, then the situation can be basically stable and peaceful evolution can be achieved. This infection plan is not only related to Link's control and integration of the entire Free Federation, but also related to his hidden mission of the Waste Saturn Mandala's revenge. Augustine and Ling Guan must pay for what they did before. There are many powerful NPCs and forces in the universe. In order to establish an advantage in advance, Link must gain sufficient advantage in the Waste Saturn. Only when you get out of the Waste Saturn, you will have enough power and will not continue to become a novice. The players are growing in an orderly manner under the rules set by Link and the care of love, and one by one is extremely strong. Everything is progressing as planned. If the Shadow Warrior, now all parties are moving, other forces will feel a little relieved. After the elimination of the mechanicism, it has entered a period of stable development, fully digesting the scientific and technological achievements of the mechanicism, and strengthening itself. This kind of silence actually makes people feel more terrifying. Because the explosion after accumulating power will be even more terrifying. Link quit the mental network and just got up to take a break with a cup of tea, when the phone on the desk rang suddenly. "Boss, the Grand Canal will reopen tomorrow, and you need to be present to give a speech and cut the ribbon," Penguin said on the phone. After the last war, the Grand Canal of Goria was crushed and completely broken by the mechanical city that was cut off. After nearly a month of repairs, Shadow's engineering team dismantled and transported part of the mechanical city that was on the canal, and rebuilt the canal. The restoration of the canal also marks that Shadow has complete control over the Gale Desert and the Goria Grand Canal, and can formally enter the south on a large scale. The restoration of landmark buildings like the Grand Canal of Goria has been put into operation again, and as a battlefield for victory against Mechanic Cult, it is natural to invite Emperor Link to cut the ribbon and give a speech. The speech is ready, and it will be sent to your mailbox later. Link turned and responded, "Okay, send a car to pick me up on time tomorrow." In addition, at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, announce the desert opening plan. Penguin nodded in response. These were all predetermined. Asia is always going to win, and the road and railway construction will be put on the agenda earlier, and it will be greatly convenient for the transportation of troops or the trade in the desert in the future. In addition, the gathering points near the Goria Grand Canal were all gathered to establish a transit point similar to the Shebei district. The plan proposed by the think tank includes military and commercial. The sand has a huge consumption power, and the tribes of the desert have resources, but they lack the channels to realize them. Now that Link has built roads and railways, this is to give them a channel for communication with the outside world, and then bring these tribes together, give full play to the advantages of large numbers of people, transform from resources to service industries, and provide a variety of services for foreigners. Service. When discussing these things, Link had the feeling of playing games to lead people out of poverty and becoming rich. False Waste Saturn hegemony, violent soldiers, violent soldiers, violent soldiers. A goes up, the other side played GG. Real Waste Saturn hegemony, Get rich first and then get rich. Concentrate on doing big things. First build basic supporting facilities, so that players have a good experience, and then fool them into attacking and fighting as cannon fodder. Hanging up the phone, Link got up, took a break with a cup of tea, and then rallied to the secret room for a new synthesis project. At night, Link lifted his pants and came out of the secret room contented and lingering. Sure enough, it is more fun to synthesize. After Link came out of the secret room, he went straight back to the bedroom to wash and rest. At this moment, beside the ruins of the mechanical city, the campfire was burning, swaying freely in the gust of desert night, and his posture was enchanting. Countless tents were lit up, and people's projections were reflected on the curtains. The large and small shadows are intertwined to form a rolling yin mountain. At one of the countless camps, 6 people squeezed in. Everyone is here, you can start. Soon, the sound in the tent disappeared, and even the entire tent was hidden in the dark, as if it had never appeared before. Hundreds of thousands of tents disappeared. Under the Fire Dragon Company camp in the desert at night, they were insignificant and no one noticed. Inside the tent, the tremolo opened the sound barrier, and even if a bomb was detonated in the tent, the sound would not be heard. Nguiji used illusion techniques to make the entire tent disappear. From the outside, it looked like an empty desert with no camp. The soul boy meditated cross-legged, his eyes turned white, and he turned on his foresight ability to warn his surroundings. The unknown soldier took out a tactical map, spread it on the table in the center of the camp, and began to explain the task. Tomorrow, Link will come to Goria Grand Canal to cut the ribbon and unveil it. After the end, he will drive back to the Howling Castle. From Goria Grand Canal to there are more than 20 kilometers between Wuthering Castle. According to the information I have learned, except for a full-time driver, he will not bring any bodyguards. Then it will be a good opportunity for us to ambush and kill. The unknown soldier pointed to the location on the map and began to assign the task. Tremolo, then I need you to create a soundproof area with a radius of 100 meters. The tremolo sound was trembling, as if surprised by the unknown soldier's decision, 100 meters in radius. The unknown soldier said without raising his head, I know you can do this, but you have to suffer a little bit. This is the most critical part of the mission. You don't want the mission to fail in the last step, right? Jinayan regretted, covering his face and vomiting, I shouldn't have handed over all the cards in the first place. Immediately after raising their heads, everyone else stared at him, frightened, his liver trembling, and quickly said, guaranteed to complete the task. The unknown soldier continued to arrange tasks. Guiji, your mission is the same as Tremolo. I need an illusion with a radius of 100 meters, but there are 2 more requirements. The first point is the illusion barrier from the outside, and the second point is to let Link in the center get lost. The illusion. With Link's strength, you will be able to perceive the illusion soon. Your goal is to delay as long as possible. Guiji chuckled, don't worry, it's okay. It must be better than tremble. The unknown soldier continued, secret trip, your task is to ensure the safety of Tremble and Gaiji. Link is extremely strong. In order to break the illusion and sound barrier, he will definitely take action against Tremble and Gaiji. You will be needed then. Use ability to dodge his attack. The secret line made an okay gesture, and immediately continued to put on the headphones to listen to the music, highlighting a coolness. Finally, the unknown soldier looked at the soul boy aside, you already know your mission, right? The white eyes of the soul boy returned to normal, well www.mtlnovel.com already knows. The tremolo on the side couldn't wait to move up and curiously asked, what is your mission? During this period of time, the dialogue between the soul boy and the unknown soldier was often like this, mysterious, but it was unknown. The other members are also very curious about the mission of the soul boy, but the impatient tremolo can solve their troubles every time. The soul boy did not hide it, and said directly, my mission is to have no mission. Use my ability to predict Link's actions and avoid your unnecessary casualties. Tremble hugged the soul boy and was very enthusiastic towards him. Then it will be all up to you. The unknown soldier closed the tactical manual and looked at the Duke of Destruction. We will do our job well. The task of fighting Link head-on will be left to you. The Duke of Destruction nodded. The cold eyes under the metal mask gradually contained fiery heat, which made people unable to look at him, giving people a blazing soul under the cold armor. This feeling has never appeared before, but everyone understands that the Duke is serious and regards Link as a rare opponent. Because of Link's outstanding influence now, everyone on the Waste Saturn knows the name of the Desert Emperor. Link's name more represents the supreme power of the desert. But many people have forgotten that Link's personal strength was outstanding. In the Battle of the Goria Canal, Link fought with the mechanical pioneer Dr. Zhao alone and killed Dr. Zhao, who had been in the Gale Desert for more than 30 years. This strength alone is enough to be among the strongest in the Waste Saturn. As the Duke is ranked third in the standings of the Waste Saturn Platinum Hotel, it is an absolute honor to have this opportunity to play against the strong. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 492. The next day, early morning. Hold on to your dream, and you can fly even without wings. The biggest difference between successful people and others is that they actually do it. In the thick bowl of chicken soup for getting up, Link got up to wash and clean up. The macaw walked into the bedroom, put the breakfast on the table, and then took out a document from under the armpit of the wing. This is today's speech for cutting the ribbon. I put it on the table. Link picked up the sandwich in one hand, and looked at the speech in the other, and asked casually, "Do you have any arrangements today?" The macaw breaks its wings and feathers, and counts them one by one. You have to go to Shenmue City and Yinchao for voluntary labor, and then prepare to go to the desert to experiment with new explosions. In the middle, I will take time to contact a few Monster Security Company customers to discuss. Let's take a look at the task details of pending orders. Oh, I didn't expect your schedule to be full. The macaw fluttered its wings and looked indifferently. It's okay. Once you get faster, you will find that the time slows down. At this point, the schedule will not feel pressure at all. Once he opened his mouth, it was old Versailles. Link nodded with satisfaction. Since you said that, then I will arrange one more task for you. Come with me to the Grand Canal of Garia and take a video of the ribbon cutting of the opening of the canal today. The macaw couldn't help but straighten his chest. His tone of voice improved a little, quite contented. Now you know whose photography skills are better. The macaw patted his chest. No problem. I must have taken you brilliantly, very handsome. After finished speaking, the macaw hesitated for a moment. Link, I have a ruthless please. You can just say it. Why are we polite? That is. Soon, a desert armored vehicle departed from the Howling Castle and rushed to the Gallia Grand Canal. Not yet close to the Goria Grand Canal, you can see the huge ruins of the Mechanic City creeping on the desert from a distance. Although the Mechanic City was torn in half and stretched across the Goria Grand Canal, it is still in ruins and is still present in the Gale Desert because of its large scale, far beyond the current industrial level of the Sand Capital. The only part that was dismantled was the part that fell on the Grand Canal. On the surface of the ruins of the Machinery City, there are many scaffolding and electric elevators, as well as gauze for construction, covering the surface with a green layer. Although the Machine City cannot be moved, everything in the Machine City can be moved. From the huge database of the underground data center, Helen found a way to solve the damage and repair of electronic equipment after the reverse magnetic frenzy. So Li Ziqian cooperated with the staff of Shadow Laboratory to dismantle all the damaged equipment in the Mechanical City and transport it back for repair. Except for the silent main power system, the current Mechanical City is basically an empty shell. This nearly 1 million tons of good metal is enough for Link to build a torrent of steel. But Link did not plan to completely dismantle the Mechanical City for smelting. Now he has Helen, the future mother god of machines, under him. When Helen's mechanical attainments are raised to the point where he is close to the mechanical pioneers, it will be the time when the mechanical city returns. Dismantle the smelting now, and then spend a lot of money to rebuild it. That's not taking off your pants and farting, it's superfluous. On both sides of the Goria Grand Canal, there are countless company tents. These construction workers from Shadu have worked hard day and night to finally repair the Grand Canal as the temperature warms up and the ice breaks and thaws. After Link arrived at the scene, he spoke according to the procedure. Standing on the makeshift meeting stage to speak, Link not only saw the workers responsible for the construction and the soldiers stationed in the ruins of the mechanical city, but also saw many people dressed as desert natives, and supporters who had traveled far from Shadu. Link's current influence is as high as 12 points. Like this kind of event where itinerary is announced, fans and supporters will follow every time they attend. The desert aboriginals are also like a thunderbolt to Link. Now Link has regained the Gale Desert, built roads and railways, and made great efforts to gather the various tribes of the desert together, and has become a living Buddha of the desert natives. After the ribbon cutting of the speech, there was thunderous applause from the audience. The macaw camera the chicken on his head, recording this scene faithfully. Oh my god, just now this battle is overwhelming. As long as it is a public itinerary, no matter where you go, it is a group of mountains and tsunami. This appeal and influence is almost nothing. It is the promise of Dragon City. Augustine, the lord of the city and the head of the Fae, does not have the influence of Link. If this continues, the waste Saturn will give birth to another Uranus-level figure. Although the macaw likes to brag, but when the camera chicken is on, he claims to be an objective and fair reporter, and his speech will not be aimless. The camera was swept from under the stage, and there were crowds of people and thunderous applause. There were tens of thousands of people. The audience rushed to the audience with enthusiasm. The macaw stood between Link and the audience to shoot, feeling almost overwhelmed by enthusiasm. The ribbon cutting is over, and with Link's speech, Shadu's next phase of plans are also made public. Whether it is the ordinary residents of Shadu, the dignitaries in Shangcheng district, the military personnel, and even the security departments of Longcheng and Fei, they all understand and analyze Link's speech for the first time, trying to extract the cocoon from the speech and analyze it. The next move and focus of Shadu. Players also turned into problem makers and listened to the complete speech in front of TV and radio. Players who did not have time to go online also saw the text version sorted out in the forum. Then began the national reading comprehension. The tribes of the desert that often migrate are gathered together to form a large tribe. Isn't this the legendary immigration? Building roads and railways is also one of the traditional three axes to get rich. It seems that this Polink has begun to pay attention to the livelihood of the desert natives. In this way, it seems that Deathmire copy can still be used for a while. Big things will happen. You did this after you finished reading and comprehension? Your Chinese teacher might not be alive and well. Just look at the superficial meaning, the elementary school students can understand it, your analysis is too superficial. The point of this speech is actually in give full play to the advantages of large numbers of people and transform from resources to service industries and establish a transit point like Shebei district. It means that to build a springboard to the south, the transformation of the service industry is to facilitate the journey of players south. So the real core meaning of this speech is that when this settlement is established, Link will march south and sweep up the wasteland. Time to help. 666. Worthy of an analysis expert. This is the gap between me and Swiba, I cried. Just as everyone was enthusiastically discussing Link's speech, the suicide squad of the Wasteland gang had already started ambushing on the only way for Link to return. Are you sure Link will take this road? The Gale Desert is so big, you can go back anywhere without building a road yet. If you don't go here, our plan won't be ruined. The team leader Zhenyan asked. But didn't find that the other people's brows had been frowned. Guiji sighed, her chest undulating, and finally she couldn't help herself, pinching her throat and lowering her voice angrily, Tremolo, can you die if you don't speak? Since the captain is here, there must be his reason. If the secondary mission fails, it will definitely be a dead end anyway. I will kill you to sacrifice to heaven first. Guiji didn't feel satisfied after speaking, and immediately added another sentence, besides, don't speak so loudly. Tremis looked indifferent, and shrugged, I have turned on the sound insulation capability. Our voice can't go through, what are you afraid of? As soon as S voice fell, Tremble suddenly felt a murderous look in his eyes. The unknown soldier stared at him with a sniper rifle, and Tremble immediately shrank his neck and stopped talking. Time passed by 1 minute and 1 second, and the noon sun was a bit spicy. They had been crawling in the desert for more than an hour, and their restlessness was gradually spreading. Although the previous missions were executed smoothly, even if they failed, there would be no life worry. But this time, everyone knows about it. Once he fails, he is either killed by Link on the battlefield, or executed by Marley after he fled back. As long as the task is equated with life, the balance of emotions can easily become unbalanced. At this moment, the soul boy took a deep breath and said, "Here is the man." Hearing these 3 words, everyone's nerves were immediately tense, and they immediately entered the state. Then, a desert armored vehicle appeared in the distance, like a flat boat in the sand sea, up and down in the waves of the desert, coming towards the ambush. The 6 held their breath, waiting for Link to enter the ambush circle. When the desert armored vehicle slowed down and climbed and drove into the ambush circle, everyone was so nervous that they couldn't breathe. Even the Duke of Destruction, the nervousness of swallowing saliva spread from the armor. The shadow of the famous Tree of Man, the Desert Emperor Link, has become the leader of the Sand Capital from a slave in half a year, destroying the dead and eradicating the mechanical gods. Every record is enough to make people astounding. Ambushing such an influential and terrifying existence, the Duke also felt fearful. The palm of the unknown soldier was sweating, and his arms were shaking slightly. In comparison, his performance turned out to be the best in the Suicide Squad. The tremor of bluffing before, now his face was pale and his breathing was short of breath. Gaiji's shoulders were shaking unconsciously, and the soul boy who was predicting the future had his eyelashes trembling. The radio communication equipment in the ears of everyone heard the sound of the Duke of Destruction. The armored vehicle has an anti-monitoring coating, so the internal situation cannot be sensed. The unknown soldier made a decisive decision, do it. Following the order of the unknown soldier, the muzzle of the heavy sniper rifle was lifted from the gravel, and an armor-piercing projectile was shot out immediately. Clang! A string of sparks exploded from the armored car plate, and the bullet was half embedded in the car body. At the same time, the Duke of Destruction also got up from the sand. Using his own magnetic control ability, 10 large-caliber artillery rose up around him, and the gunshots were loud for a while, and the flaming tongue was clearly visible in the hot sun. While outside the ambush circle, the desert is silent at this time, and the years are quiet. The thick armored vehicle swayed from left to right under fierce gunfire, and it was devastated. The armor of the Duke of Destruction raised a mezzanine, and then a dozen small mechanical spiders crawled out. The Duke of Destruction held up an electromagnetic beam ring rifle, and the laser beam on it was aimed at the armored vehicle. The mechanical spider quickly moved towards the position of the laser sight, and within a moment, it had come to the armored vehicle splattering with sparks. The mechanical spider was extremely agile, twisting its body and drilling under the gravel. A few seconds later, a continuous explosion sounded from under the armored vehicle. The wheel of the armored vehicle was blown up. The entire vehicle was lifted by a huge explosion, 1 meter off the ground, and then crashed down, blowing up a circle of gravel. Tremolo and Gaiji were so excited that they couldn't help asking, Link was bombed to death. The unknown soldier moved his position, carrying a sniper rifle to the front of the armored vehicle, and using an optical sight to check the internal situation through the blown-out front windshield. Just before he could search carefully, a warning from the soul boy came from the radio in his ears. Be careful. As soon as S words fell, everyone felt that the desert beneath their feet trembled as if they had come to life. Everyone has no time to think, and executes the soul boy's words as subconscious commands. The suicide team quickly left the original area, and the dune made a muffled noise in the next second, and the gravel on the top of the dune began to sink, like a whirlpool of quicksand. Terrifying tentacles emerged from the desert, and the huge jaws were terrifying, and the bite force was enough to cut people in the middle. It was followed by a black chitin shell as hard as dragon scales and sharp and dense tentacles. A shadow that obscured the sky and the sun rose from the desert, pressing back all the joy that had just surged in the hearts of the members of the suicide squad, and a strong sense of oppression and fear hovered in everyone's hearts. This monster they have heard from the rumors of battle, is a kind of terrifying creature named Take Dragon God. He used his own power to destroy the bunker defense line of the Goria Grand Canal, and was rated as the most terrifying creature in the desert by the mercenaries of the Wasteland Gang. Before everyone recovered, the soul boy once again issued a prompt vibration, "Be careful." A metal arm jerked out from under the desert www.mtlnovel.com with a tear. Tremolo's trouser legs were torn off directly. Dangerous and dangerous Tremolo, all the fears are written on his face, panting heavily. If I reacted more slowly just now, I am afraid that the whole leg will be caught, and the consequences will be disastrous. Boom! There was a violent desert, and a figure appeared in the light yellow sandstorm. Messy hair, wasteland-style cloak dress, a silver metal arm is particularly dazzling in the sun. Under the sunglasses, there was a wanton and arrogant expression, full of excitement, explosion, shock, fire. Haha, I can be regarded as coming today. Seeing this person's appearance, the suicide team members were all dumbfounded. Why is John here? As soon as he said this, Yin Xiao, who was still excited just now, suddenly turned cold, like falling into an ice cave. What do you call me? P.S. A book recommended by a friend, Tokyo Life from a Lawyer. The so-called lawyer is to protect the legal rights and interests of the client from infringement, said lawyer Tokiwashiko, who was called the Demon King by the prosecutor's office. The comprehensive world of Japanese dramas, the winner is justice, Conan, unnatural death, escape is shameful but useful, late night cafeteria, 99.9 criminal lawyer, Chinatown detective, etc., have not seen it and will not affect your entry into the pit. Chapter 493 Take My Disarm. The macaw's head popped out of the desert with an extremely calm camera chick on its head. The macaw's eyes lit up and its nostrils were wide open. It looked like it was watching a good show. There's going to be a good show to watch now. He actually called Silverhand by the wrong name. These idiots don't even know that Silverhand hates it when people call him John. With this kind of skill, how could they ambush him? The macaw sneered. Because it had the passive skill Big Muzzled, everyone in the audience heard it. The Suicide Squad felt embarrassed after being scolded by a parrot, but they had no time to care about that. This was supposed to be a carefully prepared ambush. How did it turn out to be them being flustered? But now that it was a mess, they had no time to think. The tentacles dragon's huge body let out a roar, and it spat out a highly corrosive venom from its mouth. The Duke of Destruction raised his hand, and a suit of armor appeared in the desert to protect the 10 cannons. However, the effect of the venom was too strong. After coming into contact with the armor, it made a sizzling sound, and the surface of the metal gradually bubbled and penetrated the air. It could not resist for long. Moreover, the range of the venom was so large that it covered almost half of the ambush point, reducing the combat area by half. The scariest thing was that when the venom hit the soundproof barrier created by the vibration sound, it corroded the edge of the barrier. Janian's face was filled with fear as he shouted, "This poison is corroding my barrier's energy." The soundproof effect of vibration was to create a barrier to prevent sound from spreading out. In essence, it was a kind of control of energy that could assimilate sound waves. However, this time, the sound barrier that had been proven to work every time had met a strong opponent. The poison that spread out even crumbled his energy barrier. There was no way that Trembled would know that the tentacles dragon god was a dark-type creature. The corrosive venom it spat out was not only effective on physical bodies, but also on energy structures. Silverhand also began to attack. His figure quickly approached the nameless warrior and Lady Ghost, but no matter whether he attacked or attacked, he held back. Sometimes, he would suddenly withdraw when he reached the fatal point, completely toying with the two like monkeys. The nameless warrior and Lady Ghost wanted to get rid of it, but the silver hand was too fast. Lady Ghost could not use any of her illusionary techniques. "Secret agent, quickly come over and help!" The nameless soldier immediately shouted. The Duke of Destruction was trapped by the tentacles dragon and could not do anything on his own. The two of them were also entangled by the silver hand and were unable to escape. The nameless warrior had done his homework, but he had never expected Silverhand to be there. This clone of the legendary killer John was no weaker than John, and it was a dimensional attack against them. The only thing the nameless warrior could not be sure of now was whether Link had been killed in the ambush. The Esper's body entered a state of nothingness, passing through the poison and desert, quickly arriving beside the nameless warrior and Lady Ghost, and took the two away. Silverhand's punch missed. Looking at the three people who had entered the void state, he stood in place with his hands in his chest and said with interest, "Interesting." The spirit child's white pupils returned to normal, and it was forced to dodge the poison. His casting was interrupted and he could not predict the future. At this moment, 3 sentry arrows flew over quickly. The spirit child could not enter the precognitive state while moving, but it was a telekinesis mutant. It instinctively felt the threat and dodged the whistle arrow. Before he could come back to his senses, a cold light flashed past his eyes. The next second, a person's smiling face suddenly appeared on the dagger. "It seems like even your prediction ability can't avoid all dangers." The soul child's face paled. He had stopped spying for less than 2 seconds, and Link had seized the opportunity to close in. Link's terrifying insight and timing were terrifying. There was also the timing, everything was just right. The Duke of Destruction had no time to take care of himself. He used a secret move to help the nameless warrior and Lady Ghost escape. The vibration sound was still far away, and no one could help him now. Link didn't hold back and immediately used Apocalypse on her head. It was an A-level skill, and Link had even maxed it out with the vast amount of experience points he had earned from the players. Waves of impact erupted with Link as the center. Apocalypse's range was 200 feet. With Link and the Touch Dragon working together, there was nowhere to hide in the ambush circle. A huge 4,000 damage value rose from the spirit child's head, and an abnormal status of deterrence appeared on its body. The apprentice had around 5,000 HP, and Link had taken away 80% of its HP in one move. With the deterrence effect, it could not control itself at all. Deterrence: the enemy's attack power, movement speed, and resistance are reduced by 10%. If the level difference is more than 10 levels, there is an additional effect of terrorizing, causing the enemy to lose control and scatter in all directions. Lasts for 5 seconds. Link kicked the soul child to the ground and said to the macaw, "Ole Gold, I'll leave this to you." In the next second, the macaw appeared in front of Link and jumped onto the spirit child's body. The spirit child cried out in pain, its body almost shrinking into a soft-legged shrimp. The macaw took out a small object and stuffed it into the spirit child's mouth roughly. The machine expanded and formed a metal belt along the spirit child's head, completely sealing his mouth and not giving him any chance to speak. Countless illusionary vines stretched out from the desert and tightly bound the spirit child. Woo 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 woo. The spirit child wanted to speak, but no words came out. His entire body was bound, and a sense of terror grew in his heart. The macaw cackled. "Go ahead and twist. The more you twist, the happier I'll be." The effect of Apocalypse just now was just as its name suggested. The spirit child was immediately bound. Without the spirit child's premonition to report the situation, Zhen Yin could not escape the disaster either. He was also thrown to the ground by a violent killing intent and became severely injured. The Duke of Destruction, who was hiding behind his armor, also took the hit. Fortunately, his armor were able to reduce the damage, so he did not lose much HP. He only lost about 3000 HP. The Duke of Destruction knew that Link was powerful, but this battle had completely renewed Link's understanding of him. However, the price was too high. The armors in front of him couldn't hold on any longer. The Duke of Destruction summoned more armors. At the same time, his legs released more self-destructing mechanical spiders. The mechanical armor on his body activated all kinds of powerful weapons, trying to turn the situation around. Link strolled towards the armor wall. The armor beside him had been completely corroded, like melted chocolate. The exposed barrels and surfaces of the cannons were also corroded, softened, and deformed by the poisonous mist sprayed by the tentacles. The Wasteland Gang has really put in a lot of effort for this ambush. Link's lips curled into a meaningful smile. There was no surprise in his eyes at all, as if this operation was already within his expectations. The cluster bombs on the Duke of Destruction's shoulders had already risen. All of his cluster bombs had tracking functions, and as long as they locked onto the target, they would not be able to get rid of it. Now, all he needed to do was to buy time and lock on to Yingluo. "You're not surprised," the Duke of Destruction said for the first time. "You know." Link had a victorious smile on his face. He didn't answer the Duke's question directly. "The Duke of Platinum Hotel, who is ranked 3rd on the leaderboard. I want to remove my defense before we start a formal conversation. That way, I can show my sincerity." As soon as Link finished speaking, all the systems in the Duke of Destruction's armor failed. The armor seemed to come loose and was forcibly dismantled. Each module fell to the ground on its own. The cluster bomb on his shoulder closed again, and his arm fell to the ground. It disintegrated instantly, and the armor plate in front of him folded up. The spider robots that had sneaked into the sand also crawled out of the sand. Their bellies were facing the sky, and they activated their self-destruct sequence and exploded on the spot. This disarm could be said to have wiped out everything. "All right," said Link, opening his arms, "we can have a good chat now." "You hacked into my system?" the Duke of Destruction asked. The series of actions of the armor just now had directly surpassed the Duke's authority and removed it on its own. It is said that the Duke is proficient in mechanics and has the ability to form an army by himself. Although your mechanical ability is strong, it's still far from Dr. Zhao's. More importantly, you've only focused on increasing your firepower and not on improving your software. The defense level of this system is at most at the level of an Elder of the Iron Council. Lin Ke started to criticize the third-ranked assassin of the Platinum Hotel. He said that the assassin had no good points. As the two of them were conversing, Miku, Lady Ghost, the Nameless Warrior, and Zhenyan were all captured by the Silver Hand and pressed to the ground. They were all bound by the illusion vine. Silver Hand stepped on the four of them, his hands in front of his chest. "I'll ask you again, what's my name?" If it was just being humiliated like this, it would have been fine. There was also a fat parrot next to him. Everyone knew the facial features of a parrot, so it couldn't make any expressions. However, the guy in front of him was beaming with joy. He had an old hen on his head, but he couldn't stop giggling. They could tolerate being defeated by the Silver Hand, since they were not as good as him. This was to make a beast laugh at the side, and he even said that he would film all of this and submit it to Shadu TV station. If these images were captured and broadcasted, it would really be the end of society. The captured Nameless Warrior still did not understand which part of the plan went wrong. They were very careful with their actions in Shandu, and they had sent back a lot of information. Janian and Lady Ghost were very careful with the aftermath, and all the plans were made by him. Even the ambush plan this time had not been leaked in advance. Even the Platinum Hotel did not know their whereabouts. Under such circumstances, the ambush operation had become a counter-ambush. What exactly went wrong? The nameless warrior could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. The Duke observed the situation. Link and himself were talking face to face. Behind them, the tentacles dragon god was watching like a tiger watching its prey. Not far away, John's silver hand clone was also watching. He only had one chance to escape, but before he left, he had to figure out some things. I'm very curious how you did it. Although the Duke's armor was not the best, it had its own uniqueness. There was no notification when the system was invaded, and it automatically carried out the dismantling process. Although Link had defeated the machinery faith and gained a lot of machinery knowledge, the research data did not say that he had studied machinery. You want to know? The Duke nodded. Only by confirming this could he assess whether he could really escape. Then I won't tell you. The Duke was stunned for a moment before he clenched his fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Link's words and actions were beyond his expectations. He couldn't find any clues. Seeing that the Duke was silent, Link's words were like a sudden clap of thunder. Don't even think about running away. I'm just talking to you this time, and you can leave after I'm done. You want to use your magnetic control ability to attack my metal armor, then use the metal fragments in the magnetic field to create an opportunity to escape, and then use a secret technique to increase your speed to escape. It's a good idea, but do you think I have a backup plan? The Duke of Destruction felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Link's words were exactly what he wanted to say, and now they were said out loud. He was indescribably terrified. The 5 people who were trapped like dumplings under the silver hand's feet were also extremely frightened. The few of them looked at the spiritual child in unison. Wasn't this kind of prophetic ability possessed by a spiritual child? Could it be that Link also had the same power, so he could guess what would happen in advance, and thus had today's counter-ambush? The more they thought about it, the more they felt it was possible. There had been rumors that Link was the son of the prophecy. Combined with the current situation, it might be true. The Duke emptied his mind and asked, "What do you want to talk about?" He wasn't as flustered as the other 5, but he wanted to get some proof through chatting. Link might not have been able to guess his thoughts so accurately through a prophecy. Instead, he might have used some sort of special ability like mind reading or mind stealing. Link paced around casually, pretending to be thinking. Let's talk about your relationship with Sang Kun. The 5 people who were struggling on the ground suddenly stopped, attracted by the topic that Link had started. There were many rumors in Aya that the Duke had suddenly appeared, and the other generals and commanders had promised him wealth, power, and women, but the Duke had remained unmoved. Moreover, the Duke's status was extremely high. He was ranked 3rd on the Platinum Hotel's ranking list. His wealth was no less than the general of the Wasteland Gang, but he was willing to be Sang Kun's bodyguard. This in itself was very strange. Bodyguard, the Duke of Destruction replied, his expression unchanged. It's not wrong to have a good bodyguard relationship. Link paused, crossed his arms, and strolled. But other than being a bodyguard, you two have some other unspeakable relationships. Do you want to hear me out? The camera chicken on the macaw's head was excitedly recording this scene from all angles. This was big news. Silverhand lit up a cigarette and also ate some melon from the side. Link touched his hair and smiled. I have to say, although Sang Kun's strength and level are not that great, he's still a first-class secret. If it were anyone else, they would have told the world that there was such an outstanding child. He, on the other hand, was a bodyguard by her side and did not mention a word of father and son affection. Amazing! I'm not as good as him in this aspect. Everyone was shocked by Link's words. The fact that the Duke of Destruction was Sang Kun's son was like a nuclear bomb, blowing up everyone present. The Duke of Destruction took a deep breath. He didn't mention this to anyone. He'd also emptied his mind just now, not giving Link any chance to read his mind, but he still knew about it. Chapter Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 494. The Duke's pupils were slightly open, but he immediately suppressed the doubts and fear in his heart. This kind of statement is not uncommon, and many people in Asia think so. Sang Kun discovered your unique talent when you were young, so he arranged for you to take care of it. As you get older, learn to control your own power. Sang Kun originally expected you to be a weapon against mechanical gods. But because you are gradually showing your talent and interest in machinery, he arranges various environments for you to show your talent. But the imprisoned life from a young age has distorted your personality, giving you a restrained but extremely exaggerated offensive personality, which is reflected in your mechanical armor, which is unparalleled offensive power and desire to control. Only when you control a group of machines can you feel free from the shackles of your father and in control of yourself. Every word of Link dissected the Duke's childhood and heart to everyone like a scalpel. The Duke's fists were clenched and trembling. After showing his amazing strength, anyone who used to take care of his diet, or who knew about it, was secretly killed. The Duke is Sang Kun's son, and only the Duke and Sang Kun know. Although there will be some speculations from the outside world, there is no evidence to confirm it. But at this moment, Link told these memories as if he had witnessed it with his own eyes. The 5 people who were tied to the ground looked at the Duke together. The Duke's current state and expression are a real hammer. The other 4 people all have melon-eating expressions, but the fear and jealousy in the eyes of the unknown soldier is deeper. Since receiving the task from Marley, he has not stopped studying Link. From large and small newspapers, rumors, videos, policies, speeches to battles, as well as the complete information obtained from the Platinum Hotel, as well as the results of investigations that have been in the sand for more than 10 days, the unknown soldier thinks that his understanding of Link has reached a certain depth. Had a general understanding of his strength and whole cards, so I chose to return from this speech without the chance of a pet by his side. But whoever wanted to still fall into Link's trap? The Duke glanced at the 5 dumbfounded people, a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. If it's just like this, then I'm going to say goodbye. The Duke said indifferently, turning around to leave. The corner of Link's mouth is slightly tilted. Then talk about something you want to know but don't know. For example, you lost all your memories before the age of 5. Sang Kun explained that he broke his head in an accident and lost part of his memory, but the magnetic control ability was activated accidentally, right? The Duke turned around and saw the smirk at the corner of Link's mouth and the look in the good-looking eyes, the way that said I just know, but I just didn't say, deliberately hanging you. The angry person's teeth tickled. The Duke looked at Link with dreadful eyes, and the conversation that Link spoke only came from him and Sang Kun, no third person knew. But unfortunately, this incident was told from the third population, and the Duke was once again shocked. This person is afraid to take the opportunity, deliberately engage his mentality. So what does General Lin want to say? The Duke himself didn't notice. As he talked with Link, he talked more and more, and he had already unconsciously stepped into the rhythm set by Link. The Duke looked at Link with a strong smile, and the emotions in his eyes were complicated, funny, regretful, sad, helpless, and pity mixed with various emotions. This expression of lofty evaluation made the Duke very upset and reminded him that he was not able to be swayed by others before. I'm afraid you don't have these questions now, do you believe Sang Kun's explanation? Link said with regret. The Duke continued to play with Link in terms of words, and gave Link no chance. If there is any doubt, it will not change my relationship with him. Lin Ke was stunned. So, you choose to recognize the thief as your father? The Duke frowned, and he kept warning himself not to listen to Link's deceit, but on the other hand, everything that this guy said before was true, and there are still many secrets, which made the Duke expect Link to take it. Content down. The captured Suicide Squad members had a brain down at the moment, and they had no time to digest this wave of revelations. What do you want to say in the end? Link expressed regret and shook his head. Do you really think that Sang Kun is your father? What do you find about your special ability? Fear that you will be harmed and targeted are all excuses. In fact, it is just an excuse for fear that others will learn that you are still alive. Your real father is Dao Tuo, who is now being held in the Asia prison, living an inhuman life. Link's expression suddenly became playful. I heard that you are still on your own to suppress the rebellion under Dao Tuo. Link's words were like thunder on the ground, and there was another wave in the hearts of everyone present. The macaw and the silver hand are the biggest eaters, and their expressions of excitement are quite cheering. And everyone in the suicide squad was shocked. Link did not give the Duke a chance to speak, and raised his hand to interrupt the Duke's opening before shaking. Believe it or not, don't rush to speak. You are also the third person on the Platinum Hotel killer list and want to investigate the truth. It's easy for you. As for why I said this to you, you have the right to be the nagging of an elder who cannot bear the tragedy. Just outrageous. I'm an elder before I say a few words. It's not like taking advantage of it, right? Just press your head and drop a generation? The Duke calculated his age, he should be older than Link. The Duke was just about to speak to refute, and was interrupted by Link again before shaking his mouth. Give you 1 minute, you really can't go if you don't leave for a while. The Duke hesitated for a moment, and immediately used the magnetic control ability to manipulate the scattered mecha fragments to reorganize. In a moment, the armor on the Duke of Destruction was restored to its original state. This armor originally used an all-metal design, and the assembly of the magnetic control ability was just the most basic operation. When the armor returned to normal, the Duke left without questioning the other 5 teammates. These 5 people know too much, not to mention the truthfulness of what Link said, but just what they heard before, they can't live. Now Link only let himself go, but did not let the 5 people go, their ending is doomed. This time the ambush can be described as the end of the day. The Duke also prepared other lethal firepower, but now there is no need to fight back. They had been exposed before the action, and Link had been prepared for this ambush. The biggest gain of this battle is to understand the horror of Link, which is definitely a desperately powerful. No matter what method you use, the other party can easily resolve it, as if all this has been practiced countless times in meditation. The Duke did not nostalgia, turned his head and left without any intent to fight. It is estimated that Link knew about the cards hidden in the desert, and if he continued to struggle, he would lose his life. Touching the Dragon God, Link, Silver Hand, any of these 3, is very difficult to deal with, and is not sure. Don't go, wait for the 3 to join together, didn't you just evaporate? Knowing that it is hard to beat, this is not a bounty hunter, this is a stupid criticism. What's more, the Duke has more important things to do now. He is going back to investigate the truth. After the Duke of Destruction left, only Link and others remained on the scene. The macaw helped the camera chicken on his head, and walked to Link's side and asked incomprehensibly, "You just let him go? Isn't this letting the tiger return to the mountain?" The Duke is the third person in the Platinum Hotel list, no other stinky fish or rotten shrimp. If you are targeted by this kind of person, you won't be able to eat or sleep. Link looked at the back of the Duke leaving. Let the tiger go back to the mountain? No, this is watching the fire from the shore. The macaw scratched the fat on the waist, and suddenly reacted, with an outrageous expression. You just said that the plot of the dog blood that is comparable to the TV show at 8 o'clock in the evening is true? I thought it was you who said it and caused the mentality. It made me cooperate for a while. Link shrugged helplessly, dare to say that he had just said for a long time, all the macaws thought it was acting. If the Duke of Destruction doesn't believe what you said, then you may have a big head next time. The macaw gloated. This seed has been planted, and he will definitely investigate when he returns. Sang Kun has a ghost in his heart. Once he knows that the Duke of Destruction is investigating his life experience and is worried that his affairs will be exposed, do you think he will just ignore it? The macaw continued to ask, with the strength of the Duke, if you want to investigate something, it shouldn't be difficult to avoid Sang Kun. The corner of Link's mouth slowly rose, so, this is what I will do next. If you want to watch the fire from the other side, you have to add a fire first. The macaw was stunned, and after a while, its wings were compared to thumbs. You are awesome. Even the silver hand on the side applauded again and again, and exclaimed, is this Master Gonghuo? I'm all ready. Master Gonghuo, who do you scold? Link solemnly corrected, I just let the lost lamb being used see the truth. If this is also wrong, then I have to admit it. Listen, do people say it? The macaw and silver hand looked to the south. The two melon eaters couldn't wait to watch the next episode of the dog blood drama. Perhaps, you can give me this task? Yanxiao tentatively asked. You? Yanxiao nodded, his eyes were deep, and his hands clasped his chest. Every cell of mine is chasing the explosion of light and heat. Once this matter is fermented, the sensation caused is no weaker than the explosion in the physical sense. I am willing to do so. Keep up the fire and appreciate the peerless explosion of Asia after the situation was ignited. It's rare for you to speak once. How could I save your face? I'll leave this to you and Lao Jin. Hearing that he could personally participate in the arch fire, the macaw's eyes lit up. Make trouble making trouble. Hey, how did you know that the wasteland helped this group of people sneak into the Sand City and set up an ambush here? I haven't heard you mention it before. The macaw had a doubt, and the words were tied to the ground. The 5 Suicide Squad members were all quiet. To be honest, they also want to know. It's simple, big data. Link's tone is natural, but from the Suicide Squad and the duo, what kind of answer is this? Seeing that the macaw and Silverhand did not react, Link explained in detail, the number of people in circulation between Shadu is hundreds of thousands every day, how can I check them one by one? But after they came to Shadu, their diet and daily activities, this city uses satellites and network systems all over the city to collect city information, and then transmits these big data to the data processing center. Troy classifies, screens, and analyzes the information before discovering anomalies. The macaw scratched his head, I know the truth, but how did Troy sort them out and think there is a problem? It's even simpler. I'm new to Shadu. I live together. I don't have a business day at the end of the day. I go to high-traffic social places with a high frequency. It seems like it comes with encryption. After being screened and monitored by Troy, I took a photo and passed it to me, so I knew it. The macaw suddenly realized it, so it would understand. Just listening to Link's description, you can feel that there is a problem in 80%, let alone being photographed. Stone hammer. The unknown soldier on the ground was so shocked that his face was blank. Can there be such an operation? What else are the Roush satellites, camera monitoring, mobile phone monitoring, consumption records? There are tens of millions of people in Shadu. How much data is generated in one day? From this massive amount of data, we screen out suspicious ones for secondary targeted analysis. How terrible is the computing power of this computer? What Link said casually and came to him at his fingertips were all things beyond his knowledge. This wave of ambush can be described as a complete failure. Since they arrived in Shadu, they have fallen into the enemy's traps and surveillance. No matter what the plan has been, it is impossible to succeed. It's a dimensionality reduction blow. The macaw kicked the tremolo's ass. Now it's a big escape. www.mtlnovel.com. What about these weird guys? Link lowered his head to look down at the 5 people who were tied up. Life or death was only between his thoughts. Link was still familiar with the 5 people in front of him. As the Dungeon Wasteland Gang Asia battle, the 5 gatekeepers in front of the ultimate boss Sang Kun were cordially named F5 by the players. As a gatekeeper, the 5 people's lethality is not high, but their abilities are especially disgusting. Fortunately, they stuck the player for a while, and finally found a way to kill the 5. After defeating F5, it was the Battle of Sang Kun. During the battle, Sang Kun will summon the Duke to help him in the second stage, allowing players to taste the intensive firepower of one man and 1,000 troops. After successfully defeating Sang Kun and the Duke, the player will find clues from Sang Kun and complete a series of tasks according to the clues to unlock the truth of the event. That is to say, the Duke is actually the child of another warlord Dao Tuo. Because he activated his superpower when he was young, Sang Kun coveted him, so he designed to steal the young Duke back and disguised the scene of the accident, making Dao Tuo mistakenly believe that the child was in the accident. Death. After that, Sang Kun brainwashed the Duke from an early age and cultivated it into a secret weapon to help him ascend to the throne of the chief commander of the Wasteland Gang. In addition, Sang Kun and Dao Tuo disagree, and the Duke himself suppressed Dao Tuo's uprising and the tragedy of his father. Of course, these are not the main reasons for Link to let the Duke go. This guy is only LV 46+, leader. If he is 4th level higher, he will never have the chance to leave today. Link clenched his fist in regret. If you reach LV 50+, the leader, you will be able to reach the target of the I Am a Legend mission. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 495. Link looked at the 5 people, thought about it for a moment and said, let it go. The macaw's eyes widened, unable to believe what Link said. All 5 people on the ground let out their brains with a buzzing sound and looked at Link in shock. Silver hands are on the side, his arms clasped his chest completely like a bystander, watching Link perform. The macaw was angry. Let the Duke of Destruction mess up the wasteland to help me understand, but why are these trash fish also let go? Come to ambush you at any level, don't you have a point? Each one is strange and strange. Why is your mind so strange? Link glanced at the 5 people and shook his hand. The mutants of the Wasteland Gang have a kind of control chip implanted in their brains. As long as they don't obey the command, the brain chip will release overload current to make them they died instantly. They were all ordinary people in Asia, and they were captured by United Pharmaceutical and used as testers. This ability was only acquired. The macaw heard the tragic experience of the mutant, and couldn't help but scratch his waist, his eyes filled with pity. It's so pitiful, I was caught as a guinea mouse, and I lost my brain while gaining abilities. The 5 people listened for a while. What is meant by gaining powers and at the same time they lost their brains, and their brains are not affected at all. But in a blink of an eye, according to the logic of this fat parrot, he would not come to ambush Link if he had nothing to do with his brain. Does this explanation mean that they were originally stupid critics? The more you explain, the more you go back. In addition, the mouth is still sealed by a metal chain, and there is a steel ball that prohibits opening. There is no way to explain it. The psychedelic vine was slowly loosened and removed, and the macaw used thought force to release the bound word ball in the mouth of the 5 people. This operation made the 5 people bewildered. I thought this fat parrot had a stinky mouth, but I didn't expect it to be capable of thinking. Link was really strange. Okay, Link has let you go. Get out of here. The macaw flung its wings disgustedly, a pair of small rice-sized eyes full of drama. The 5 people climbed up from the ground, moved their muscles and bones, and looked at each other. For a while, it was unclear whether Link was really letting them go or was testing them. The macaw hesitated to see the 5 people, with wings akimbo, with one hand to spray, "Your mother's spiritual position is here? After you come, you can't move your legs? Still not going? Then should you kneel down and knock a few heads?" The others looked at the unknown soldier, waiting for the captain of the suicide team to give them an answer. But the unknown soldier seemed to be anchored. Heaven and man fought, without saying a word. Tremolo was the most uncomfortable, gritted his teeth, "You don't leave, I'll leave first." After that, he turned and left. Tremble took a few steps and found that Link didn't mean to take action. He gently exhaled a suffocating breath, and his shoulders slowly sank. It was basically safe. Others saw that the tremolo was fine, and there was a small fortune in their hearts, and they turned around and prepared to leave. "Stop!" At this moment, the unknown soldier finally spoke, making a sound. The few people who were about to leave all stopped and looked at the back of the unknown soldier with a puzzled look. Even the farthest tremble stopped, wanting to look back and listen to the unknown soldier's thoughts. The unknown soldier turned around and looked at the other four. If you still believe me, then don't go back. The tremolo was stunned for a while before returning to his senses, and immediately shouted, "Are you confused? Don't you go back. Where are we going?" Waiting for Marate to press the controller. Will everyone finish playing together? We know the relationship between Sang Kun and the Duke of Destruction, and this alone must be dead. Before Mare can do it, Sang Kun will kill us and destroy the corpse. When everyone thought of this, their bodies trembled. Sang Kun and the father-son relationship of the Duke of Destruction, and the father-killing enemy of Sang Kun and the Duke of Destruction, no matter which one is true, they will never have a way to survive. Going back is dead, and not going back is dead. They seem to have nowhere to go. For a while, everyone in the suicide squad was lost. Then what shall we do now? Guiji lost his senses, her eyes lost focus. The unknown soldier clenched his fists, struggling inside. Both roads are now blocked, there is only one way to survive. General Lin, I would like to return to Shadu, and I would also like to ask you to go online and take in my bereaved dog. Kneel down on one knee. Please come down. When the unknown soldier said this, everyone present was shocked. The macaw raised his open mouth, and couldn't help but sigh, you are too unprincipled, right? Dare to play without finding a way to survive? I have never seen such a shameless person. The unknown soldier said nothing, just waiting for Link to speak. The other members of the suicide squad were dumbfounded, and they never expected a showdown. Janian sneered a few times, what if you surrender? When the Duke of Destruction returns to Asia and reports that the mission has failed, Mare will see that we don't go back, and will definitely activate the controller. By then, we will all have no way to escape. Can all this be solved? After speaking, his tone was extremely frustrated. It is better to take advantage of the last few days of life and experience the feeling of freedom. Everyone's eyes flickered, and the tremor resonated. They were born in the poor southern desert and have been ruled by warlords since birth. The extremely poor life forced them to betray themselves and risk a way out of mutation and failure. They are all survivors and lucky ones. Those who participated in the experiment in the same group as them in the laboratory either turned into monsters because of the side effects of the drug, or died suddenly due to mutation failure, or became a research species with great research value and used for anatomy. I thought that if you become a mutant, you can become a master. But their brains were implanted with chips connected to their brains, and they were controlled by the warlords of the United Pharmaceutical and Wasteland Gang, and they became a veritable dog. Now, the task execution fails, and there is no way forward or backward. The secret line had no thoughts, and he laughed. Suicide Squad, what a suitable name. Rao is a macaw. Seeing a few people so helpless and desperate, he couldn't help but scratch his head tactically, wondering if he scolded too much. After they finished venting, the unknown soldier looked up at Link. Since General Lin can unwittingly invade and destroy the Duke's mecha program, he can instantly disarm his equipment, and he can also collect abnormal personnel through network big data analysis. There is a way to solve the things in our heads. The unknown soldier threw his voice, and he believed in his own judgment very firmly. Link put his hands on his chest, without any expression on his face, but flowers are already blooming in his heart. The pretender did not let himself down. As the leader of the suicide squad, his strengths are analytical skills and awareness of the situation. With these strokes, his disguise, and firearms abilities have to go back. And what made Link even more delighted was that the moment the pretender knelt down, the system also sent a notice, indicating that the pretender had reconciled, and the initial loyalty reached 90 points, highlighting an outrageous. The chip in your head, I can indeed solve it. But I don't collect waste under my command. You must prove your worth. Other Suicide Squad members are still analyzing the words of the unknown soldier, which seems to make some sense. As a result, Link simply admitted directly that it could indeed solve the time bomb in their heads. Back to Asia, they must be dead. But staying and surrendering to Link can have a ray of life. For everyone in the Suicide Squad, although it was just the dog who changed its owner, the new owner was too powerful in terms of power and strength. Following Link, there is definitely a bright future. The Soul Boy reacted quickly, and the second one knelt on one knee, with his fingers on the center of his eyebrows, surrendering. Then, after considering the secret line and Guiji, they also chose to follow Link. Tremolo stood there, dumbfounded. Tangled for a moment, then ran back. When he passed the macaw, he was tripped by Lao Jin's paw, and he threw a slippery kneel in front of Link, kneeling down. Link twitched his eyelids a few times and glanced at the troubled old Jin. The macaw has its wings inserted in front of its chest, its belly is more prominent, and its face is disdainful. Jedi, he is the one who is going to leave, and he is also the one who comes back now. There is nothing wrong with a small punishment and a big warning, right? Link did not say much. Looking at the few people kneeling in front of him, several messages appeared in the system. The initial loyalty of the unnamed warrior pretender was the highest, and it was directly pulled to 90. It can only be said that the person who knows the current affairs is a good man. Secret travel is 82 points of loyalty, 88 points for the Soul Boy, 86 points for the Ghost Girl, and 80 points for the Tremolo. Under the premise of solving the brain chip, the initial loyalty of the 5 people is not low. Since you all still want me to help you solve the hidden dangers of your brain, then show your strength and prove your value. Go to the Military Intelligence Department and complete a mission of level B and above. After you succeed, you will find me in Howling Castle. Link, after all, he took out an MI department token. The pretender held up his hands and accepted it respectfully. Remember, you are in a race against time from now on. The time for the Duke of Destruction to return to Asia is about 3 hours. 3 hours later Mare is very likely to learn that the ambush failed. No one will know this. When will the mad woman press the controller? Gyulu. Link's words suddenly made the suicide team members nervous. 3 hours, from now on, they will go to the Military Intelligence Office of Shenmue City to pick up the task, understand the situation, perform the task, complete, and then report to the Howling Castle. Time is running out, as if there is a pair of invisible hands tied around the neck, gradually exerting force, suffocating. What is even more desperate is that after the first battle, they were all maimed by Link and their blood volume was endangered. In this situation, perform a difficult task, and you have to race against time to get a chance. The unknown soldier got up immediately, greeted Link and turned back and said, "Suicide Squad, gather." Everyone mentioned the last spirit, and quickly went to Shenmue City after gathering. After the Suicide Squad left, the macaw couldn't help but ask, except that the Soul Boy's ability is a bit strange, the other people's abilities are very average, why do you have to accept them? Link is speechless. The macaw has a very high vision right now, even the elites of more than 40 levels are not in the eye. A great man once said that we should do more of our people, and less of our enemies. Our goal is exactly this. Now when we are employing people, the role of the Suicide Squad is different. It's as simple as you can see. If they can complete the task at the speed of life and death in the state of residual blood, then they are qualified. When the follow-up and the Wasteland Gang officially start war, send them to the front line to fight, guess what will happen? The macaw scratched its ears, its eyes with big rice grains suddenly lit up, staring at Link like a ghost. I'm a boy, your hand is too ruthless. The high-end combat power of the Wasteland Gang is these controlled mutants. If the Suicide Squad reappears in front of them, it doesn't mean that Cher has the ability to solve the brain. Is there a problem with the chip? This news spreads. Who is still working for the Wasteland? It is estimated that all of them have fled to Shadow and join us. The silver hand on the side was silent, and even some sweat leaked from his back. This Link is too terrifying. After finding the intruder from Troy, Link started his plan, one after another, playing everyone in the palm of his hand, and even making the game to the Wasteland Gang. The episode of the ambush ended, and several people returned to the Howling Castle. After greeted Link with Link, the macaw and Silverhand left the Howling Castle, preparing to return to the previously established orbit, first to Shenmue City for voluntary labor, and later to the desert for explosive experiments. Silverhand was playing with a few cluster bombs, and said with a smile, "At night, try the power of these cluster bombs first. The Duke is third in the Platinum Hotel standings anyway, so the power of this bomb shouldn't be bad." The macaw was triumphant and held his head high. It's not because of me." When the Duke of Destruction was reorganizing the armor, he used his mind to control a few of them, and this was left abruptly. Silverhand stretched out his thumb, and he did not stingy with the words, "Lao Jin, awesome plath. Crooked Rugud. Awesome, then call Dad." The macaw said with his arms akimbo. The Silverhand froze for a moment, staring at the macaw. "Dog son. Fuck you uncle, I am your father." The macaw blows up its hair. "Dad, I don't have a father." www.mtlnovel.com. With a word of Silverhand, I choked the macaw directly. This guy was cloned. To be precise, he really has no father. Fuck, change the limit, you are awesome. The two scolded for a while, and Yinxiao suddenly became serious and asked, "I'm asking you something, why did you suddenly think about cutting the ribbon with Link today? Isn't it because Link thinks that my shooting skills are good, that's why he told me to go?" Yinxiao continued to ask, "You said that you called me." The macaw nodded. "Isn't it afraid that you will be lonely in the charity work of Shenmue City? This is all the love of Dad for the cub." Yinxiao then fell silent. The macaw tilted his head and looked at the silent Silverhand, and said with a smile, "Jedi, are you moved by the impact of your father's love?" Yinxiao said slowly, "I think we may both be tricked by Link." "Shrimp? You think, he knew there would be an ambush a long time ago, and then called you over with the filming as an excuse? He also knows that we have a good relationship, so if you go, you will definitely call me. It turns out that you did call me. Then the two of us went to work for Link for free." The macaw froze for a moment, and then his cheeks swelled red, and after a long time he squeezed out a sentence, "MMP, Link has done it." Chapter 496. Behind the Scenes. "This is too scary. He's the one who needs our help, but now we have to be grateful to him." The macaw wrapped its wings around itself and hid its entire body under the wings. Silverhand's forehead was also covered in sweat. "This buff is too scary. I have to be more careful in the future." The macaw nodded in agreement. After that, the man and bird cursed as they made their way to the Divinewood City to work. Meanwhile, Link, the initiator of this incident, was already at Windhowl Castle, counting the spoils of war from the counter-ambush. Weeping Valley, Howling Castle. Link was talking to Troy. "You've done well this time. You discovered the Wasteland Gang's ambush in advance and gave us enough time to make a plan. Without the General's trust, how could I have been in charge of the data center?" Troy said politely. "I relied on the huge machine's computing power to analyze and extract big data, even including controlling satellites. This was something I couldn't imagine before. After the research team has mastered the rocket manufacturing technology and launched 2 more satellites, I can really cover the entire wasteland with signals." Troy's tone was filled with longing. The future that Link had promised him was slowly being realized. His abilities and strong points were also gradually being reflected. The big data analysis this time was just a small experiment, but the butterfly effect triggered a plan to subvert the Wasteland Gang. Troy was full of achievements. Link took a sip of his champagne and said, "I thought that the battle with the Wasteland Gang would be like the battle with the Machinery Faith last time, where both sides would set up a formation and fight head-on with real weapons. I didn't expect to receive such a big gift. I really have to thank Marley. The gift is heavy, and the affection is heavy. General, don't forget that the Platinum Hotel has a part to play in this matter. Should we completely eliminate this internal threat first? I've already made preparations to hack into the underground black market and Platinum Hotel's trading hall system at any time. Troy was eager to try. Link smiled. There's no rush. I'll let Derek continue his antics for a few more days. In the current situation, the enemy would only think that the ambush had failed and would not think of anything else. They will continue to use that route. Keep an eye on it. All right, don't worry. I'll report to you as soon as I have any news. Troy understood what Link meant. He still wanted to use this route to draw out more content and create more value. Link's main focus was still on the Wasteland Gang. He would remember what happened to the Platinum Hotel. After he dealt with the Wasteland Gang, he would return the favor to the Platinum Hotel when he had time. After Troy left, Link thought about his next plan, and he couldn't help but smile. This time, Crazy Woman Murray and the Platinum Hotel had helped Link a lot. Perhaps this time, we can really watch the fire burn on the other side of the river. With the Duke of Destruction's power, there was nothing he couldn't find out if he wanted to. Sang Kun was careful, and those who knew the truth were all killed. However, one of the people involved, Dao Tuo, was still in prison. The Duke of Destruction only needed to extract a little skin or blood from him and do a DNA test to confirm his identity. Wouldn't it be stupid to look for clues when it could be solved with science? In the previous life, the Duke of Destruction had been kept in the dark until his death. Link was looking forward to seeing how the Duke would take revenge on Sang Kun after knowing the truth in this life. Coupled with Link's people sowing discord, there was bound to be a great battle between the Duke of Destruction and Sang Kun. When the battle between Sang Kun and his bodyguard began, the other warlords would inevitably be tempted to make a move. Even without Link's help, the Wasteland Gang would be in chaos. What Lin Ke had to do was to issue missions to the players and get an A. If not for this, Link was prepared to accumulate power to guide the players forward steadily. Now that Troy had used big data to find the Suicide Squad, Link had used the Duke of Destruction's background to stir up internal strife in the Wasteland Gang. The difficulty of conquering the Wasteland Gang had suddenly been reduced by more than 30%, or even more. The Wasteland Gang had been a threat to Link before, but now that he had the Duke of Destruction as a tool, he no longer needed to worry about them. As long as the plan worked, the Wasteland Gang would be in chaos. Link's eyes were focused on the map. Once the Wasteland Gang was annihilated, the entire Asia would be merged into Shandu, and the area of Shandu would become the largest in the Freedom Federation. Furthermore, the Sand City would change its restrictions on the inland forces and have a coastal port, which had extremely important strategic significance. Now that he had completely dealt with the surrounding threats, the next step was to interfere with the Freedom Federation's forces. Dragon City and Link would definitely interfere. This would not only affect the resources Link could mobilize in the future version updates, but also the hidden A-rank mission on the Wasteland planet. However, it was very difficult to directly pry open these two behemoths. Thus, Link's plan was to start from the small. This small referred to the various small forces. Platinum Hotel, Joint Pharmaceutical, Moon Shadow Council, Nature's Alliance, Brotherhood, Cross Army, and so on. These forces were considered small in Link's words, but in reality, they had a wide influence on the Wasteland planet and had a deep foundation in the masses. Link drew a circle around the Platinum Hotel, the United Pharmaceutical Company, the Academy's forces behind the scenes, and the Brotherhood. The relationship between these three forces was very complicated, and they had a lot of power. Using the relationship between the three forces to cause a big movement and find an opportunity to intervene in Dragon City and Faya was the best choice. Platinum Hotel's top-ranked Shining was a product of the joint pharmaceutical production. He belonged to the Academy, but he was also the Platinum Hotel's top killer. The third-ranked Earl of Destruction was from the Wasteland Gang and had a close relationship with the United Pharmaceutical Company. The combined pharmaceutical company produced and captured mutated humans for research, which was the mortal enemy of the mutated human resistance brotherhood. Due to the widespread existence of the mutated humans on Wasteland Planet, once a large-scale group incident occurred, it would affect the entire Freedom Federation. Whether the Wasteland was chaotic or not, Link had the final say. Only in chaos would Link be able to interfere and advance the plan. It would be profitable. In addition, there was another reason for choosing these three most outstanding forces. The behind-the-scenes boss of Platinum Hotel and the leader of the Mutant Brotherhood were both legendary NPCs. Now that Link had two legendary NPCs, John and Silverhand, as well as the giant Sand City, he had enough power to fight against the other two. After clearing his mind, Link's mind felt clearer. After listing out the ideas and outline, the rest would be left to the think tank to perfect and supplement. Link had just put away the plan when his office phone rang. It was from the Military Intelligence Department. "General, the Suicide Squad has successfully completed their mission. Should I arrange for them to go to Howling Heights now?" Ren Yi asked carefully. Lin Ke glanced at the clock on the table. There were still 20 minutes until the 3 hours were up. Lin Ke could not help but smile smugly. As expected of the F5 that had held the players back for half a month in his previous life. Even a B-rank mission was not a problem for them when they were on the brink of death. "Bring them to the entrance of the Underground Research Center and wait for me there." 10 minutes later, Link appeared at the entrance of the Underground Research Center. It was already afternoon, and the sun was already approaching the horizon. The entire desert was covered in a layer of soft sunset glow. When Link arrived, the 5 members of the Suicide Squad were already waiting nervously at the door. They looked at the time from time to time, their eyes filled with anxiety. There were less than 10 minutes left before the 3 hours were up. If everything went well, the Duke of Destruction should have arrived in Essia by now and was on his way to report the results. The military intelligence officer who led them here took the 5 of them to the entrance of the Underground Research Center and left. The 5 of them looked at the high-voltage power grid, various blockade lines, and patrolling soldiers in front of them. Other than that, the most attractive thing was a few semicircular dome-like buildings that were less than 3 meters tall. It was impossible to guess where this place was just from its appearance and design. The imposter carefully observed the patrolling soldiers, including their patrol routes, perspectives, and shifts. There were no loopholes, just like a strictly operating machine. If one wanted to invade this place, unless they had a large-scale illusion or disguise ability, it was unrealistic to sneak in. The imposter came back to his senses and couldn't help but laugh. He was still thinking about such a problem at a time like this. His occupational habit was really acting up. The 5 of them waited expectantly. Then, the late Link came. Looking at the 10-minute countdown, he was anxious, but his eyes were filled with anticipation. Link didn't waste any time after he got out of the car. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go. I'll go in and solve your problem." The 5 of them followed behind Link and entered the dome-shaped building. They then took the elevator down. The large tokamark device in the center of the Underground Research Center glowed with a faint blue light, which was extremely eye-catching. The light shone on the surrounding metal, making it shine brightly and full of futuristic technology. However, their lives were at stake, so they had no interest in paying attention to this. Link went straight to Helen's laboratory. He had told her beforehand. "Helen, it's the 5 of them." After entering the laboratory, Link stood to the side. When the 5 of them saw the person in charge of the laboratory, they were all extremely surprised. This was because the person in charge in front of him was too young. With the imposter's eyesight, the little girl in front of him was only 15 or 16 years old, right? With such a person in charge of extracting the chips from their heads, what if the operation failed? Although Helen often spent time in the laboratory, she could tell that the Inhumans were doubtful because she occasionally communicated with them. "Hello, I'm Helen, the director of the Underground Research Center. I've already heard about your problem from the general. It's not a big problem. Who's first? Helen was wearing a white coat, and the mechanical arm on the operating table was moving like a monster. It looked ferocious and terrifying, sending chills down one's back. The question of who would go first made the 5 members of the suicide squad scared. Was this reliable? Link couldn't help but laugh at the way they were acting. At the last moment of their lives, they could work hard to complete the task, but now on the operating table, each and every one of them was like a child who had been injected with an injection. They were just short of looking at death calmly. In the end, the imposter took the lead and said, "I'll go first." As the leader of the suicide squad, all the members were willing to follow him and pledge their loyalty to Link. Link had also promised to solve their problems. If they encountered any problems that they could not solve, he should stand up. The imposter lay on the operating table, and Helen skillfully operated all kinds of machines. Her aura suddenly changed, and she had the aura of someone who controlled the wind and clouds in a laboratory, which made people involuntarily believe in her. The first step is to break the chip's protection mechanism and enter the system to modify the underlying code. The second step was to let the chip discharge slowly. During this process, your brain would feel numb. Third, use a special technique to block the nerves of the chip in the brain and disconnect. Step 4. Crush the chip with a targeted ultrasound device and let the chip residue be discharged out of the body through the cerebral fluid. Helen's 4 o'clock made them dizzy. "May I ask, how long does the surgery take for one person with such complicated steps?" the imposter asked on behalf of the other members of the suicide squad. Helen moved the device away and stared at the imposter with her hands up. "Do you feel anything strange in your nose?" The imposter tried to sense it, but he didn't seem to feel anything. But the next second, something flowed out of her nose. The imposter reached out and touched it. Then, he raised his hand and saw a black liquid with a silver glow on his fingertips. When he pinched it with his hand, he could even feel the granules. Helen smiled and tilted her head, signaling the imposter to get off the operating table. "All right, your surgery is complete. Next." "This is it." The imposter was stunned, and so were the others. Just now, this little girl was only fiddling with the equipment. They thought she was doing some preparation work, but she was actually operating it while she was talking. The imposter was tall and burly, but in front of Helen, he was as dumbfounded as a child. He took the tissue and wiped the unknown liquid from his nose. "All right, let's try the effect now." Helen took out a controller and a transparent glass cage from the side. "This is the chip and controller I made myself. Take a look at the effects." After saying that, Helen used the remote control and pointed at the white mouse in the cage. The white mouse trembled all over and died completely after a while. Then, Helen aimed at another white mouse in the cage and pressed the controller. Soon, she was also electrocuted to death. This is a common format controller. One controller can control different implanted chips. The 5 members of the suicide squad broke out in cold sweat, each of them dumbfounded. The United Pharmaceutical Company's remote controls were all separated. However, the lowly in front of him had actually made a general control device. If this thing were to be circulated, it would simply be a great killing weapon. One controller could control all the mutants in the Wasteland Gang. What kind of concept was that? Helen picked up the controller and aimed it at the camouflaged man with a bright smile on her face. Her big eyes were full of seeking knowledge and being pragmatic. "It's your turn now. Try the post-operative effect." In the eyes of the imposter, this smile was so sinister that it almost sent him away. Chapter 497 Art is Explosion. The imposter had carried out more than 20 missions, and he had resolved all the difficult situations he encountered with his own analytical skills. But now, he was forced into a dead end by a teenage girl. The imposter looked at the controller in Helen's hand and thought, "I'm feeling great now. There's no need to test it." Helen's smile was bright, and her eyes were shining. "I still need to test it. This is my first time doing this kind of surgery, so science should be more rigorous. After saying that, Helen pressed a button on the controller without waiting for the imposter's consent. The 4 people standing beside the imposter pounced to the left and right, avoiding this fatal signal. The team leader had gone through surgery to remove the chip, but they hadn't. If the signal was slightly off, they would be the ones to die. The imposter stood in place with his arms in front of him. His 4 teammates were like fireworks that burst out in all directions. The scene instantly fell silent. Not a single sound could be heard. The imposter's eyes were wide open, and the horror on his face had not disappeared. He put down his arm and touched his head. There was no pain, no electric current in his brain, and there was no brutal scene of his skull exploding and his brain spilling out. When the 4 teammates on the ground saw their captain standing there unscathed, their expressions changed from shock to joy. The remote control had no effect on the captain. The experiment was a success. They would no longer be controlled by others because of the bomb in their heads. His passionate feelings erupted like a volcano. In Link's system, the loyalty of the 5 of them had increased greatly. The imposter's loyalty had jumped from 90 to 98, while the others' loyalty had also increased from 80 to 90 plus. Helen chuckled. Seeing that the imposter was fine, she knew that the experiment was a success. She comforted him. It turns out that the technology of the joint pharmaceutical is very ordinary. I thought it would be difficult. With this level of skill, how can you be controlled by others? The 5 members of the suicide squad felt as if they had been stabbed in the chest. It was not that they had not looked for it. Even the rewards and savings from the missions, a large part of which had been used to find experts who could crack brain chips, had come up empty. Even when he visited powerful programmers and mechanical engineers from the outside world, they were at their wits' end about the chip. However, from Helen's tone, cracking the chip was as easy as drinking water and eating rice. We've looked for him before, and we've spent a lot of money on him. Zhen Yin's face was flushed red as she tried to explain. Helen was immediately surprised. I've already looked for him, and he can't solve it. That shouldn't be the case. You guys weren't tricked, were you? After he finished speaking, Janian choked and didn't manage to say another word. This was the rhythm of another stab. Link tried hard not to laugh. Helen had grown up a lot, but she still lacked the right understanding in some aspects. But it was no wonder. After absorbing nutrients from the data center, Helen's attainments and strength in machinery had surpassed Dave and Ludwig. Now she could no longer find a benchmark to judge her own strength, so she would not have a clear understanding. Helen, the knowledge you've acquired in the data center is enough to make you the top mechanic on Wasteland. Your talent and strength are both very high. What you think is easy to do, other mechanics or engineers might not be able to do it in their entire lives. Helen stuck out her pink tongue and shrank her neck playfully. She had been lectured by the general again. Who's next? This time, even without Helen's mention, the desire in the eyes of the remaining 4 people was overflowing. Helen dealt with the brain bombs of the Suicide Squad members in no time and resolved their worries. Until the end of the operation, the 5 of them still felt like they were in a dream. It was hard to believe that the dog chain that had tortured them for several years and had found various ways to solve it could be solved in just a few minutes without any pain. Link looked at the 5 of them and crossed his arms in front of his chest. You have completed the B-rank mission in Shenmue City and proved your strength. Now that I've fulfilled my promise and solved the problem in your heads, you will be the special squad of Shenmue City. I think the name Suicide Squad is a good one. Your daily accommodation and training places have already been arranged for you. Enjoy your rare freedom for the next few days, and I won't assign any tasks to you. The members of the Suicide Squad had tears in their eyes. They were all touched by Link's words. Not only did General Lin not blame them for the ambush, but he also took them in and helped them solve the problem in their brains. Previously, the 5 of them had thought that switching from the Wasteland gang to Link's side was just a change of owners. Under normal circumstances, they would be eager to arrange missions for them. However, Link let them take a break and enjoy their freedom. Everyone's nose twitched. It was worth it even if she had to do enough for Link. The impostor pondered for a moment, then stood up and said, "General Lin, please don't hold it against us. It's already a great kindness for you to accept us and help us solve our brain problems. We don't want to help you solve your worries, but instead, we want to relax. I believe that my team members are just like me, unable to sleep and eat in peace." Link had a faint smile on his face and his hands behind his back. "It's also in order for you to take a break. Execute it quickly." The members of the suicide squad were all moved, their eyes glistening. The impostor was stunned for a moment, but he quickly saluted, "Suicide squad, orders received." If one looked closely, one would notice that the impostor was trembling slightly because he was too excited. Link waved his hand, signaling for them to leave. Helen looked at their backs and couldn't help but say, "General, you're a really good person, Ying Luo." Link did not reply. If they were assigned a mission and died, wouldn't he have saved them for nothing? Moreover, the Wasteland gang was quiet now. Their best task now was to hide their names and rest, pretending to be dead, and let the people of Platinum Hotel and Wasteland gang think that they had failed the mission and that the 5 of them had been beheaded. As long as this news was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, the next time the Suicide Squad appeared, it would attract a lot of attention. Link's plan to recruit mutants would then be successful. At night, another feature of Gale Desert appeared. The wind howled, and sand and dust filled the air. In the desert, Silverhand and Macaw were wrapped tightly in their long robes. They wore windproof glasses on their heads and leaned forward to withstand the wind and sand. The two of them arrived under a huge rock that had not completely weathered away in the desert. Only then did they feel that the blade-like wind had weakened a lot. Silverhand took out a fuse machine from the metal box on his back. Then, a palm-sized storage area popped out from the mechanical arm with a few cluster bombs inside. "Later, you go and plant the bomb. I'll stay here and watch the machine." Silverhand stuck close to the macaw and shouted. "Lower your voice," the macaw said, shaking its ears. "Your father's ears haven't become bad yet." "Be careful," Silverhand said. "I don't want a white-haired man to see a black-haired man off. Your dad's warning." As long as the two of them were together, the Zhuan people who made use of every opportunity would definitely not be absent in terms of seniority. The macaw used its speed ability to carry the fuse and cluster bomb to the designated location. This place was the fixed site for the two to experiment with the bomb. If it was during the day, one could clearly see the large craters on the ground around them that were caused by the explosion. They were densely distributed in the surroundings like meteorite craters. This was the scene that could be seen in the Gale Desert at night, where there was a sandstorm that could bury part of the explosion pit. The macaw found a spot that had not been destroyed and quickly placed the cluster bombs according to the requirements. After a while, he used his special ability to hide behind the boulder. "Okay, it's up to you now. Don't let your father down." The macaw patted Silverhand's shoulder and gave him a loving blow. Silverhand's lips curled up and he suddenly said with a smile, "Since you're an elder, I'll naturally hand over the heavy responsibility of detonating the bomb to you." After saying that, he grabbed the back of Fate's neck and pressed its huge metal beak on the detonator. With a crack, the night sky outside the boulder they were hiding in was suddenly lit up. It instantly lit up the night sky like it was daytime. Even the sandstorm in the sky could be seen clearly. The entire sky changed color. Silverhand couldn't help but stand up and open his arms. He didn't care about the sand in his mouth and praised, "Arg! Praise the sun, praise the art." In the next second, the shockwave of the explosion rushed over with the sand, hitting Silverhand's mechanical arm and leather robe. The sand hit his face like needles. However, Silverhand stood in place, allowing the sand to hit his body, feeling the power and shock of the impact. This zero-distance contact, as well as the light and heat released by the explosion, made Silverhand's body and mind comfortable, as if he had a soul dimension communication with the sun. Silverhand took a deep breath and felt his soul sublimate. The macaw put on a hood and quickly went to the explosion pit. Although the wind was strong and quickly carried away the heat from the explosion, the macaw could still feel a warm current as it stood beside the crater. The macaw took out a searchlight and shone it into the pit. It was immediately amazed. This explosion is outrageous. A few big things actually created a 2-meter wide pit. The macaw was dumbfounded and couldn't help but shiver. Silverhand immediately followed. Seeing the huge pit, his eyes lit up like a weasel that had seen an old hen. He said excitedly, "I didn't expect the cluster bombs to be so explosive." The macaw glanced at the Silverhand. "Son, remember to thank Troy when you get back. If he didn't disarm the Duke of Destruction's armor today, we would have been turned into ashes by this batch of cluster bombs." He waved his silver hand. "How can you let a father come to thank you? Son, you're unfilial." The two of them argued for a while more before they prepared to return to Mystic Wood City. Silverhand grinned and laughed happily. The quality of the cluster bombs was excellent. After testing one, there were 3 more in his mechanical arm. He would have a lot of fun in the future. The two of them took 2 steps and didn't speak, but they stopped in unison. "By the way, kid, do you have a feeling that you're not done yet?" The macaw was the first to speak. "No one knows his father better than his son. As expected of my good eldest son. You understand your father so well." Silverhand's tone was gratified as he patted the macaw's toothed shoulder. The strong wind in the desert gradually stopped, and only the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling could be heard from the rapid friction of the wind in the distance. The sandstorm passed through the area where the two were and blew toward the east. The clamoring desert gradually quieted down, and coupled with the moonless night, it was unusually quiet. Only the stars in the sky were shining, trying to stand out from the rest of the stars and the Milky Way. "Then are you doing proper business or looking for fun?" Silverhand asked as it supported its chin with its mechanical arm. The macaw's facial features were scrunched up, but after a while, they suddenly spread out. Its rice grain-sized eyes were shining. "There it is. I have an idea that can both do proper business and have fun. Hurry up and tell me. Listen to what I'm going to say. Didn't you let the Duke of Destruction go back to the Wasteland Gang to cause trouble, and then you accepted the task of sowing discord between him and Sankan? Now that the Duke of Destruction has returned, doesn't that mean that your plan can begin? The Duke of Destruction will definitely investigate this in secret, but our mission is to make it big and create a situation where the Duke of Destruction and Sankan fight. Don't you have the Duke of Destruction's cluster bombs? We can go to Essia and shoot him." Silverhand's eyes were bright, and he couldn't help but grin from ear to ear. "As expected of my dear son. Just hearing this plan makes my blood boil. Detonating it in the desert would not be as satisfying as going to the wasteland to help Essia detonate it. Not to mention the explosion, he could also use the cluster bomb to frame the Duke of Destruction, directly provoking the opposition between Sankan and the Duke, and complete the mission. Wonderful. When she returned, she might even give Link a shock if she told him that she had completed the mission. It was 3 times the surprise. Silverhand looked at the time on the LED screen on the mechanical arm. It's 9:30 in the evening. It'll take about 2 hours to get to Essia at full speed, which is 11:30. We can make it on time. Midnight, it's good to cause trouble, sleep, and have sex. The two of them acted swiftly and decisively. Silverhand quickly went to the sand slope in the distance, removed his cloak, lit up the jeep, and stepped on the gas pedal to drive the macaw to the Wasteland Gang. Silverhand was full of imagination as he drove. It wasn't easy for them to come to Essia and follow the Imperial Edict. How could they live up to Link's trust if they didn't do something big? The bigger the matter, the more there would be no room for negotiation between the Duke and Sankan. The macaw also rubbed its hands in excitement. This wave of father and son soldiers on the battlefield has become a good story. With the engine roaring, the jeep's two headlights were at the front. The jeep wriggled up and down in the desert like a small boat in the sea, firmly moving toward the south. P.S. Wanjun has seen everyone's voting for the side story. Currently Wasteland Singer Ally was in first place, and the story of the Sand Rat was in second place, and the voting gap was not big. So, Wanjun decided to write both side stories to everyone so that they wouldn't be disappointed. This full subscription side story event was probably going to be held during the new year, and Wanjun would inform him in advance. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 498 Chapter 500 Link and Penguin Penny, and other think tank members finished the video conference. It was already past 11. Link rubbed his temples and worked out plans for the Platinum Hotel, United Pharmaceutical, College, and the Brotherhood. It was too brainstorming. This plan is not only related to the three forces, Dragon City and Fae, but also to the two legendary NPCs behind it, so it has to be cautious. At the end of the meeting, after Link washed up, no trace of the macaw was found in the castle. These two guys, haven't they returned from going to the desert to get an explosion? Link murmured and walked straight to the bedroom. The two guys, Macaw and Silverhand, have similar smells, and often get together, and occasionally they come back late after having fun. Link didn't worry about the safety of the two guys either. They would have burned the incense if they didn't harm others. Who could do anything to them? It's just tonight that Link was upset and always felt that something would happen. Perhaps it was the reason why the meeting was too brain-burning. Finding a reason for himself, Link did not fall asleep for a while after lying down. On the other side, after a long journey, the Macaw and Silverhand finally came to the center of the wasteland Gang Asia. The Silverhand drove the car into a brightly lit company camp, which was a mercenary camp for the warlord Sang Kun. After a beautiful drift, the wheels lifted up a burst of sand and stopped accurately between the two jeeps, leaving a punch-wide distance in the front and rear. It's worthy of the top car skills of the standard program. I might see you at the destination. The Macaw finished speaking, and disappeared into the co-pilot as a gust of wind, as if it had never appeared before. Silverhand swaggered out of the car, not worrying about being recognized in the barracks. Not long after the car stopped, some mercenaries noticed the movement here, walked out of the temporary duty room, frowned and walked towards Yinshao. The Silverhand swaggered toward the mercenary, with smoke in his mouth. "Where did Zari go? Why are you the only one to come back?" The mercenary glanced at the license plate, and the strange mercenary in front of him was suspicious. Silverhand reached out to hold the dying cigarette butt, spit out a cloud of smoke. The other hand threw out a metal product, and asked in a knowing tone, "This night, the crotch is frozen and hard, of course I want to find a place to thaw. Also, don't forget to take care of the car tomorrow morning, and take a look at the drive shaft by the way." Yin said as he walked, and when he finished speaking, he had already turned his back to the mercenary. The mercenary was a little dazed, and asked smoothly, "Then why are you going now?" Yinshao spit out the cigarette from his mouth and cursed, "Aren't you nonsense asking? It's so cold, of course, I want someone to warm it up." The mercenary's puzzled expression gradually thawed, replaced by a smile that everyone knows, and shouted at Yinshao, "Brother, help me see if technician number 3 is there today, I will pass the shift in the first half of the night." Silverhand didn't need to speak, nor turned his head, but he stretched out his left hand and waved it to signal that he heard it. The mercenary looked at Yinshao's back, his mouth slightly raised. "The spring is very cold, and I will go warm in the middle of the night." Dressed as a mercenary, the Silverhand swaggered out of the mercenary camp. After leaving the camp, Yinshao walked to the most illuminated place in Asia. The cold wind in the desert did not dispel Asia's enthusiasm. Only at night can the sky shine brightly with brilliant lights. Asia is built on an oasis in the desert, and there are also towering high-rise buildings in the center. Even from the slums built by fallen shanty towns, you can see the tallest building in Asia at a glance, the United Pharmaceutical Building with the acronym UM. With the United Pharmaceutical Building spreading to the surroundings, other tall buildings are inferior to the UM building. Most of them are only 1/3 of the height. However, unlike the unique United Pharmaceutical Building, the taller buildings are lined up in a row, usually 30% to 20%. Group of buildings. The green plants and flowers on the building complex can be seen with the naked eye, filled with the whole layer, which has the taste of a sky garden. These buildings scattered around United Pharmaceutical are the residences of the warlords in Asia. Although I usually have a palace on my site, I also spent money to build a mansion in Asia. Behind each warlord's residence, it represents the position controlled by the respective warlord's forces. Below the mansion are the close guards of their respective warlords. Each mansion is guarded by hundreds of mercenaries and a dozen mutants, ranging from tanks and anti-aircraft guns to small and heavy machine guns. It is like a military base. Outside the central area, it is Asia's most precious oasis resource. But the untouchables have no right to enjoy these. The oasis is enclosed, and a cold grey wall is built to enclose the vibrant green and become the back garden of the warlord. Outside the high wall, is the true Asia. The trading area, a little closer to the high wall, is the place where wealthy merchants and powers are at work in the desert. It is full of arms, drugs, flesh, and human trade. It is the gold-selling cave of Asia, and its unique name Chaos District. A surrounding moat was excavated here to introduce oasis water. And beyond the moat, is the slums of Asia, all built by shanty towns. The slums of Shadu have dilapidated buildings at any rate, and only a few are shanty towns. But here are all squatters, and some squatters barely build up 2 or 3 floors, and the wind blows at night and can even make a creaking shaking. More outlying in the slums, there are scattered mercenary camps. There are more than a dozen warlords, large and small, in the Wasteland Gang, and only 6 can participate in the formulation of rules. Some time ago, Dao Tuo was voted to jail by the crowd, and his forces were also dispersed by the Duke of Destruction, and he was merged into Sang Kun's command. Although it was the first time to come to the chaotic neighborhood, the Silver Hand quickly became involved and found one of the arms dealers. 20 minutes later, a cargo truck drove out of the arms dealer's yard and went straight to the bar street in the chaotic neighborhood. In the basement of the arms dealer, everyone was knocked out and locked in the room. There is also an iron basin in the center of the room, and the coal in the basin is burning, emitting a steady stream of black smoke. The freight truck drove into a dark alley and turned off. Yin Xiao covered the truck with a tarp, then lit a cigarette and walked casually to the corner of the alley. Big Bird turns around the back door of the bar. "Baby, you can't do it, the speed is a bit slow." The macaw suddenly appeared mockingly. The Silver Hand disapproved, and spit out a smoke ring. "Has the place been surveyed?" The macaw leaned against the wall, with its wings in front of its chest, and said, "You can rest assured that I'm doing things. I will wait for your goods now." 1 person and 1 bird came to the cargo truck. The macaw opened the rear compartment, shone it with a flashlight, and nodded in satisfaction. "Since it is going to be bigger, just these few places are not enough. Do you want to have more flowers and drag everyone else into the water?" the macaw suggested. The Silver Hand hesitated for a while. "If that's the case, you can't just stay in the chaotic neighborhood. Before you leave, the mercenary camp outside has to take care of it." After talking, Silver Hand and macaw looked at each other and smiled, and the two thought to go together. "Come, toast to friendship." Asia Prison. After the Duke came back, he did not immediately report to Marley. He was now full of stories that Link had told before. If Link did not lie, then Dao Tuo is his biological father, and Sang Kun, a despicable man, not only designed to him, but also turned him into a weapon to fight for the power of the Wasteland Gang. Lies lied to him. Fortunately, the Duke knew that Dao Tuo was imprisoned in Asia Prison, or he personally escorted him. He has obtained a device for quickly measuring DNA similarity from the black market in the chaotic neighborhood. He has added his own blood. As long as he can obtain Dao Tuo's blood, he can compare the two DNA in 10 minutes. The degree of similarity is reached. Whether it was the smoke bomb that Link released to confuse and provoke, or did something happen, and the answer will soon be known. The Duke has always been out there, and the plan to infiltrate Shadu is also a secret mission. No one knows except the 5-seat warlord of the Wasteland Council and the members of the Suicide Squad. Under the pretext of serving for Sang Kun and interrogating Dao Tuo, the Duke easily came to the prison's most closely guarded room. The Duke glanced at the prison guard at the door, and the warden tremblingly, his stern mask slightly turned sideways. The questions the commander interrogates are confidential. All monitoring and recording are turned off, and you all leave here. Once someone is there. After hearing the content of the next questioning, I promise you will not see the sunrise today. The Duke of Destruction was so aggressive, coupled with such aggressive threats, the warden and the guards nodded and promised, "Please rest assured, Lord Duke, we will retreat after the prisoner is brought. I have turned off all the video and audio, and people are coming to us. Just go." Good deed, such a god, no one in the whole Wasteland gang dare to provoke. Soon, 2 prison guards escorted Dao Tuo and passed through the gates and led him to the interrogation room. Dao Tuo's complexion was thin, his eyes were slightly loose, and he could not see the aura of a warlord at all. With heavy shackles on his hands and feet, he walked slowly. The Duke stared at Dao Tuo, trying to find the connection between the two from Gao's appearance. If it was changed before Link spoke, the Duke would definitely have a sneer under his mask at the moment. But now, the Duke felt more and more similar to the person in front of him. Dao Tuo was seated with his hands clasped on the table of the interrogation room. The 2 prison guards were about to close the lock on the table, and the Duke yelled, "Enough! Get out!" The prison guards were so scared that they were horrified. The warden's 2 beards were so scared that they waved to the 2 prison guards to roll over, and reprimanded, "Idiot thing, no one can be a demon under the eyes of Lord Duke, you give it in front of Lord Duke. The prisoner is locked, is he not believing in Lord Duke's strength? Don't you get out of here!" The prison guard shrank his head and ran to the warden, and then the warden squeezed a flattering smile, "The Lord Duke will interrogate slowly, let's go out now, immediately and immediately." After speaking, he urged everyone out and closed the iron gate. After going out, the warden and the guards breathed a sigh of relief, each of them soaked with fright. Ma Yet, the 3rd in the Platinum Hotel rankings, just breath is suffocating, it's horrible. After confirming that everyone was gone, the Duke's mecha shins opened, and a lot of spider robots ran out, guarding the surroundings, and then entered the interrogation room. Dao Tuo sneered when he saw the Duke, "Did Sang Kun send you to see me making a fool of myself?" The Duke kept silent. Dao Tuo continued, "Is it killing me? Before, I resolutely opposed cooperating with the mechanic cult. As a result, you insisted on going your own way. Now the mechanic cult is defeated, and the Wasteland Gang has also lost a lot of its main force. Sang Kun, now I'm afraid I can't sleep at night when I think of me. My existence is, in a sense, a sign of his failure in command. Thinking of me would think of his ridiculous plan." The Duke stepped forward, the mecha arm pressed Dao Tuo's arm, and then took out the detector to aim at the thin arm. As the needle penetrates the blood vessel, the blood sample in the tester gradually rises. After starting the instrument, a green indicator light was on. When all 10 lights are on, the truth comes to light. The Duke pulled the stool and sat in front of Dao Tuo, and the two looked at each other. After a while, the Duke took the lead. "A long time ago, you had a child, didn't you?" Dao Tuo's stubborn eyes suddenly changed, and there was a hint of softness deep in his eyes, which returned to normal for a while. "Dead, you can't threaten me, save some effort, you won't get anything you want from me." The Duke glanced at the detector, when the second green light was already flashing. Soon. Just talk and talk. Dao Tuo was taken aback for a moment, and then squeezed out an inexplicable smile. The cold-blooded bounty hunter destroys the Duke, but there is still time to chat. As soon as the voice fell, the Duke's system issued a reminder that the spider robot detected that someone was approaching the iron gate outside. The Duke turned his head, got up and opened the door of the interrogation room. Squeak! The big iron gate outside opened at the same time, and a woman in a military uniform walked in with a cold face, followed by 2 teams of murderous elite mercenaries. I heard that you have come back. Why didn't you come to me to report the situation in the first time? Instead, came here? What about the rest of the suicide squad? Marley asked coldly and high-profilely one after another, and the speed of her speech gradually accelerated. The Duke's face remained unchanged, and his voice did not fluctuate. The mission failed. All members of the suicide squad were captured. I escaped. Mare looked up and down, and the Duke could not find any traces of post-war on his body, and his armor remained brand new. Suffering from the doubt in her heart, Marate asked again, then what did you come here to see Dao Tuo do? The warden said that you came to interrogate Sang Kun's order. You haven't gone back to see Sang Kun. What order did you take? Interrogation. This is my personal matter, and I don't need to report to you. Mare burst into a fierce fire. Just about to speak, there was a deafening explosion outside Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The fire blazed into the sky, and through the prison windows, you could see that the sky outside was reflected in white. Mare, the Duke, Dao Tuo, and everyone present were dumbfounded. But in the next second, explosions sounded from all around, like a series of cannons, everywhere. When the cluster bomb exploded, the peculiar splattering fragments, dragging the tail of white smoke, set off a new round of explosions after the explosion. Chain reaction. Everyone's mind is blank. This kind of cluster bomb is an iconic technology unique to the Duke. Marley turned her head abruptly and stared at the Duke, her eyes split. You want to rebel? Chapter 499 An unprecedented change in the wasteland. The Duke of Destruction was shocked. He stared at Marley as if he wanted to eat her up. You framed me. Other than his mech, the only other team that still had cluster bombs was the laboratory he was staying in. Now, a series of explosions had occurred outside, characteristic of his unique cluster bombs. What would others think? Also, it wasn't a coincidence that Marley showed up when he was investigating the truth in the prison. Looking at the Duke of Destruction, who was talking nonsense, Marley quickly retreated and waved her elite bodyguards to face the enemy. I think you need to explain it to Sang Kun. After that, Marley retreated to the end. Bodyguards who were proficient in firearms and special abilities were dispatched, and their powerful firepower and attack power instantly set off a storm of war in the prison. The Duke of Destruction activated his Esper ability, forming a thick wall of armor in front of him. At the same time, the mechanical spiders triggered an explosion. For a moment, the prison was filled with smoke and the flames of war. The Duke of Destruction used his magnetic field to absorb the bullets, but the elite bodyguards' guns and armor were not affected at all. This further proved that Marley had come prepared. Marley was still shocked as she watched her own Chinook squad fight the Duke. Half an hour ago, she had received news that the Duke had returned to Essia alone. Instead of reporting the situation to her, he went straight to the prison and said that Sang Kun had ordered an interrogation of Doduo. When she sensed that something was wrong, she immediately brought her men to the prison. Before she left, she had even specially ordered them to change into special equipment. She did not expect that it would really work. The explosions outside continued, each wave higher than the last. The impact of the explosion shook the earth and the mountains. It could even be felt in the prison. The Duke of Destruction looked at the detector. The fifth green light was flashing. The first 4 green lights had all lit up. They just needed to wait another 5 minutes and the truth would be revealed. Seeing this, the Duke of Destruction threw out a triangular piece of iron that was as thick as a finger from behind his armor. At the same time, he threw 2 pieces at the corner of the interrogation room behind him. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz The 3 iron pieces released a strong high voltage, forming an electric barrier to block the enemy. Inside the interrogation room, the Taoist priest was completely dumbfounded. First, it was the Duke's interrogation, and blood was drawn. Then, Masha arrived, followed by an explosion, and then the fight. The Dao Tuo couldn't keep up with this sudden plot. "Duke, you betrayed the Wasteland Gang a long time ago, right?" None of the carefully selected members of the Suicide Squad returned. "You said you escaped, but there were no signs of a battle on you." Mary's eyes were sharp. The moment she saw the Duke, her vigilance was raised to the highest. All the members of the team, except for the Duke, were killed. They contacted Dudo as soon as they came back. There were no signs of battle on them, and there were also the series of explosions from Essia. It was hard not to think that the Duke had betrayed the Wasteland Gang and turned to Shandu. In fact, the members of the Suicide Squad did not die, but betrayed the kingdom with the Duke. This thought emerged in Marley's mind and grew uncontrollably. Marley immediately found the controller for the 5 of them and pressed the start button without hesitation. "Since you're already dead, just be a dead man. Don't come out and do anything evil." After Marley pressed the controller, she heaved a sigh of relief. Even though she didn't know if the Suicide Squad members were really dead, she only felt relieved after pressing the remote control. Now, whether it was dying in battle or defecting to Shandu, his hanging heart could finally rest. Behind the heavy armor plates, the Duke was sullen, but he had no way to explain himself. He could only wait for the results in 5 minutes. While the intense confrontation was going on in the prison, Silverhand and John had already left Aya. They stood at a high point in the desert, enjoying the brilliant fireworks show. The explosion started from the outskirts of the warlord's territory, from the back garden of Sankin's house, and all the way to the chaotic neighborhood. Silverhand reveled in the chain of explosions he had set up. He had gotten a truck full of explosives from the arms dealers, and the key nodes and landmarks were filled with cluster bombs specially made by the Duke. The originally brightly lit Essia had been engulfed in flames since the explosion, and the mushroom cloud of the explosion was clearly visible in the night sky. What followed was a large-scale power outage in the area. It was as if all the lights had been sucked away and released in the form of an explosion. The explosion spread to the sand dune where Silverhand and the macaw were standing, and the light reflected Silverhand's smile. This was an explosive masterpiece that he had personally created, and it was full of artistic sense. Every deafening explosion was an affirmation of him. The macaw was holding a coconut slurp and wearing a pair of sunglasses on its beak. It was lying on the sand dune and drinking coconut juice while enjoying the grand fireworks show. It looked like it was on vacation. The explosion in the chaotic street had ended, and the entire central area of Essia had been completely cut off, falling into darkness. With the help of the lights in the slums and the starlight in the night, one could see the billowing smoke. The residents of the slums all ran out and climbed up to the roof to look at the center of Essia. The mercenaries at the outermost camp also ran out of their tents in groups of 2s and 3s. They looked towards the center, completely unaware of what had happened. It was a mess. The macaw finished the last bit of coconut juice and threw it away. It clapped its hands and said, "It's over, then we can go back now." Silverhand grinned. "We're not even here yet. You haven't even seen the big gift I've prepared for you." The macaw snorted in disdain. "What big gift? You're listening to an explosion here, but it's not even as big as my fart. What big gift can you get by bluffing? Then, you should take a good look at your father's feelings for you." After Silverhand finished speaking, he took out his phone and sent a series of mysterious codes. Then, he put on his sunglasses and a mask. "Tisk illusionary power swan ni. Before the macaw could finish its taunting, a huge fireball suddenly rose from the mercenary camp in the distance. The fireball was so huge that it was several times more terrifying than the explosion in the core of Aisha. One even had to look up to see the whole picture. In the next second, a shockwave visible to the naked eye destroyed the mercenary camp and completely razed it to the ground. The lights in the camp disappeared in an instant, and the flames rolled hundreds of meters into the air, rolling up thick smoke like skeletons. Silverhand opened his arms and felt the largest fireball he had ever created. He felt the heat and embraced the sun. Hula! The shockwave quickly spread to where the Silverhand and the macaw were, and the dumbfounded macaw was buried under the sand and dust, leaving only its metal beak sticking stubbornly into the desert. Silverhand's calves were also completely covered in dust. The air trembled violently, and it was a soul-shaking explosion. Silverhand directly blew up the mercenary camp's armory. The various explosives stored inside were remotely controlled to explode in a chain, bringing the fireworks feast to a climax and ending it. Silverhand felt the pleasure of the sand hitting his face, and he felt as if his entire being had been sublimated. The macaw's head popped out of the sand, then its whole body. It quickly shook its fur and swept its eyes across the Sangkun mercenary camp not far away. Oh my god, it's directly blown up. Not only was it razed to the ground, but the entire camp had been turned into a deep pit. Smoke was rising from the pit, and it looked like a crater created by a meteorite. The macaw subconsciously touched its head, which was empty. It said regretfully, "Sigh, it's a pity I didn't bring my camera chicken. Otherwise, I could have recorded the scene just now." Silverhand crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled. "This time, I can go back and submit a mission. I can't wait to see Link's shocked expression." Silverhand and macaw hid their achievements and fame, and left Essia immediately after they were done. At this time, the Wasteland gang had completely fallen into chaos. The Duke had just made a strong appearance some time ago and dealt with the trusted aides who supported Tito. The powerful cluster bombs left a deep impression on them. Now, in the middle of the night, they suddenly saw several cluster bombs and explosions, and one of Sangkun's mercenary camps was blown up. The warlord commanders who got up from their beds were all dumbfounded and had not yet realized what had happened. In the prison, the confrontation continued. While the confrontation was going on, Mary transferred more troops over and reported the incident to Sangkun. Sangkun was still in shock from the explosion. When he suddenly heard that the Duke had come back alive and even went to see Dao Tuo under his orders, the fear buried deep in his heart could not help but grow. The explosion caused by the cluster bombs, the Duke going to see Tito, and the chaos in Essia. The situation that Sangkun was most unwilling to face had finally happened. The Duke seemed to have found out the truth of his birth. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the meaning of this series of operations. Sangkun's eyes were cold as he muttered to himself, "Since that's the case, then don't blame me for ignoring the many years of father and son relationship, Ying Luo. You betrayed me first, Ying Luo." At the same time, the Duke's detector finally ended its countdown. A row of green lights flashed rhythmically, indicating the completion of the test. The Duke impatiently pressed a button on the side, and soon a line of text appeared on the LED screen of the instrument. Blood sample match, 99.999%. The Duke's mind went blank when he saw the results. So what Link said was true. Tito really was his father. The Duke looked at Tito, who was hiding in the interrogation room with his hands over his head. He thought of the beatings and abuse he had suffered in prison, as well as the years of losing his child. A wave of resentment and anger rushed to the top of his head. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The Duke's emotions triggered his special ability. Then there was a creaking sound. Not only all the metal in the room, but even the steel bars in the prison's concrete resonated with the Duke's emotions. "Sangkun, I'm going to kill you." The next day, Link was woken up by Sunflower's hot-blooded chicken soup. Seeing Link open his eyes, the sunflower decisively shut its mouth. The little thing had sharp eyes. It sniffed Link's annoyance and immediately shut up. After washing up, Link looked at the empty table and was stunned. Don't tell me old Jin didn't return all night. Link walked out of the room and prepared to contact the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As soon as she walked out of the room, she saw the macaw in her pajamas in the corridor, yawning repeatedly. You just came back. The macaw looked at Link and said, No, I came back late. By the way, there's a report on your table. It's handwritten by Silver, you can take a look at it later. The macaw scratched the fat on its waist and went back to its room to catch up on sleep. Silverhand's report? Link was a little confused. Was this a reflection of his voluntary work? However, when Link reached the office and finished reading the report that had been polished by the macaw, he was dumbfounded and blurted out, F***ck. The truth was out. The two of them went to the Wasteland Gang last night and caused such a big incident. Link immediately brought the documents to the meeting room and contacted Penny and Benjamin using the sound bug on the way. Emergency meeting. Think tank members and military higher UPS are all present. 5 minutes later, the members of the think tank and the higher UPS of the various military units were all connected. The Wasteland Gang's situation has changed, Link said with a serious expression. We have to speed up our plan. What's going on? Penny asked. What did you get, boss? The plan we discussed yesterday was to send people to the Wasteland Gang in a few days to sow discord between the Duke and Sang Kun. Then, we will send a suicide squad to attract mutated humans to join, and then we will send in humans to completely disintegrate the warlords and mercenaries of the Wasteland Gang. However, after the experiments of the glistening silver hand and the macaw last night, they used the cluster bombs they had intercepted from the Duke to create a series of explosions in Essia, and also blew up a mercenary camp in Sanko. He has completely sowed discord between the Duke and Sang Kun. After Link finished speaking, the military personnel in the video were all shocked. Benjamin, Li Zijun, Ren Yi, and a few other newly promoted higher UPS in the army. They all knew that Silverhand was John's clone, but they didn't expect him to go to the Wasteland Gang and make such a big news with Macaw. If there are no accidents, the Wasteland Gang should be in chaos now. We can't proceed with the plan we made before, so I need to make a new plan. Link glanced at the generals in the video and ordered, Li Zijun, after the meeting, immediately arrange for the army to set up a position at the border of the Wasteland Gang in Shandu and prepare to receive refugees. Benjamin, arrange for the cavalry unit and special forces to patrol the front lines to prevent the infiltration of small enemy forces. Ren Yi began to issue frontline missions to the Inhumans, allowing them to cooperate with the military and giving them the authority to enter the Wasteland Gang. Penny and the Monster Security Company also had to help the army. In terms of logistics, they had to make two preparations, one was to attack, and the other was to receive the refugees. Commander Dai, I need the special forces to enter the Wasteland Gang and report back the latest situation of the Wasteland Gang. Yes. The people who were called in the video said in unison. Right now, the Wasteland is experiencing an unprecedented change. If we take down the Wasteland Gang, Shandu will unify the entire western region and establish a solid position. Link said in a serious tone. Chapter 500 A Surprise from Essia. Orders were issued one by one from Howling Castle. After the video conference ended, everyone in Sand City got into action. The news of what happened in the Wasteland Gang was not blocked, and soon the Shita TV station reported the riot in Essia. The residents of Shandul were happy to see this. The Wasteland Gang was now the only big problem in the southern desert. Now that there was internal strife, these simple people wanted to bite each other. Under such circumstances, it was logical for the army and Inhumans to gather and set out. Some of the more observant shop owners had even put up banners with the slogan celebrating the return of Essia to Shadu, 20% discount for all stores. It was an ordinary morning, but after the video conference at Howling Castle ended, the players who were receiving missions at the military intelligence department suddenly saw Ren Yi rush in. Then, the military intelligence department temporarily stopped the mission handover, and all the staff were pulled into the office for a meeting. The players were dumbfounded. Why did they stop so early in the morning? However, the players who were quick-witted had already secretly called their good brothers and motioned for them to hurry to the military intelligence department. Something big had happened. In less than 5 minutes, all the staff of the military intelligence department rushed out of the conference room. Then, the missions on the scrolling screen changed, and a large number of frontline missions were added. This included but was not limited to the construction of frontline positions, the transportation of supplies, temporary teams entering Essia to collect information, destruction teams, and so on. The players were excited. These missions meant that Sandal was going to attack the Wasteland Gang. Soon, the news from the TV station reported that there was internal strife in the Wasteland Gang. Shandu took the opportunity to push forward and target the Wasteland Gang. After this period of training in the death quagmire, the players' levels had been greatly improved. Currently, the average level of the players in Shandu had reached level 25, and the first group of players who were rushing to level were around level 32-35. The higher the level, the more difficult it was to level up. Not only did it require EXP to level up, but it also required EXP to level up skills. The environment in the Sand City was still considered good. Link's drastic changes, construction, and various open dungeons and centralized missions had saved the players a lot of travel time. However, these numbers could not determine the strength of the players. As version 1.0 lacked resources that could quickly recover HP, after discovering the leveling up and recovery methods, the players basically reserved 1 or 2 levels of experience for emergencies. After 2 months of peace, the players in Shandu once again caught onto a big event and went to pick up a quest. On the other hand, the players from Dragon City and Magic Knight were filled with envy and jealousy. In this festive atmosphere, the players charged to the front line. Link's influence was shocking. There was no need to mobilize the soldiers and civilians of the Sand City. With a think tank behind the scenes planning, all the resources in the entire Shandu were mobilized. The members of the special forces were the first to arrive at the front line. They had thought that it was only a small-scale chaos, but when they arrived at the scene, they were completely frightened by the current situation in Essia. This wasn't just an internal conflict, it was a civil war. The spies and special agents of the special forces watched the war in Essia City. Tanks were firing at each other, mortars and howitzer were raining down on the bombarding point like a dense storm, and anti-aircraft gun bullets were pouring down on the drones in the sky. The streets and alleys on the ground were in ruins, and there were intense gunshots. The mercenaries of various warlords were fighting to protect the alleys in the city. This is simply a warlord melee. Even though the agents had been prepared before they came, they still felt their scalps go numb after seeing the chaotic battle. They didn't know what to do. I heard that the chaos in the Wasteland Gang was caused by Silverhand and Macaw last night. This is outrageous. Previously, the Wasteland Gang was like an iron plate and even cooperated with the machinery faith. Silverhand and Macaw turned the place upside down in one night. It's really terrifying. Why don't you think about the strength and standard of these two? Essia was in a mess. All the warlords were hiding in their secret air raid shelters, commanding the battle outside. No one noticed that the intelligence agents of the special forces in Shadow had sneaked into Aya quietly and started a comprehensive information collection and undercover work. Soon, Link received the news from the front line. Reading the fax report, Link's expression was wonderful. After the Silverhand and Macaw had wreaked havoc last night, chaos had broken out in Essia. The Duke of Destruction had annihilated Merli and her team. When the other warlords saw the explosion of the cluster bombs and the death of Merli, their first reaction was that Sang Kun couldn't help but attack them. They gathered their troops and happened to encounter the mercenaries that Sang Kun had sent to the prison to kill the Duke of Destruction. This further confirmed the other warlords' speculations that Sang Kun wanted to become the only master of the Wasteland Gang. A war broke out immediately, and a street war began. However, just as the two sides were in a heated battle, a piece of news came, which suddenly made the warlords, who had concentrated their firepower on the big event, dumbfounded. Sang Kun's bodyguard, the most terrifying man in the Wasteland Gang, the Duke of Destruction, raised his flag and threw himself into the arms of Dao Tuo. Using the influence of the Dujuo and the Duke of Destruction, the two of them easily recruited the former subordinates of the Dujuo and also roped in a group of mutants. However, the battle had already begun. The war was over. The warlords had their own opinions about Sang Kun. They had been submissive because of the Duke of Destruction, but now that the Duke of Destruction had changed his flag and had this rare opportunity, all the warlords wanted to overthrow Sang Kun. They had become the first seats because of the deterrence of the Duke of Destruction. Now that everyone was pushing a wall when it was down, it was their turn to be the first seats. Seeing that Sang Kun was about to be attacked by the others, some warlords wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to recruit Mary's subordinates. However, they quarreled with the other party, and the quarrels escalated into a battle. They attacked the rear of the main force and started a chaotic battle. It was like a chain reaction, causing the warlords to think that someone wanted to take advantage of the situation to monopolize the army. They secretly shot people behind the scenes, and it finally evolved into a chaotic battle between the various warlords. The battle had been going on since midnight, and the warlords had suffered heavy losses. However, they were already in a killing frenzy and could not stop. Among them, the most outstanding warlord was none other than the Dujuo force, which was supported by the Duke of Destruction. Although they were the last to regroup and form an army, with the Duke of Destruction as their ultimate weapon on the battlefield, Dujuo had firmly occupied nearly half of the territory of Essia, and there were mercenaries from other forces who had surrendered to them. Link couldn't help but let out a deep breath after reading the report. In the plan they had discussed yesterday, making Sang Kun and the Duke suspect each other was only the first step. The second step was to send a suicide squad to recruit the mutated humans. Link had planned to let the matter ferment for a few days before letting the Silver Hand stir things up. He didn't expect the two to steal a few cluster bombs from under the Duke's nose. They'd barged in and opened up the situation. In fact, it was even better than the best result Link could imagine. Lin Ke stared at the document in a daze. Who would have thought that the Wasteland Gang would collapse on their own right after they had just come up with a package plan to deal with them? In such a situation, they didn't even need to send troops to attack. They could just let them kill each other first, and then let the players go in and end it. In the previous battle against the Machinery Faith, Link and his pets had been the MVP of the entire match. It could be said that he had led the way and defeated the Machinery Faith without giving the players a chance to show off at all. If he were to take action this time, the players would probably not even have a chance to drink the Northwest Wind. Squeak! Just as Link was deep in thought, the macaw pushed open the door and entered. Its eyes were bright, and it didn't look like it had stayed up all night and didn't have enough sleep. Instead, it was full of energy and energy. I heard that there's a fight at the front line. Are they still fighting? The macaw was overjoyed. It had only played a trick with Silverhand with the purpose of sowing discord, but it didn't expect that it would directly ignite a barrel of gunpowder. Link handed over the fresh summary document, and the macaw giggled as it read. The Silverhand and macaw's act of acting first and reporting later had disrupted Link's rhythm. However, in terms of the operation, it was a great success. They had completed 200% of the target plan. The macaw put down the summary document and grinned in joy. Silverhand and I did a pretty good job on this mission, didn't we? I wonder what kind of reward the generous Desert Emperor will give us? The macaw's eyes were filled with shyness and anticipation as it pressed its two wings together. Emoji as shown in the picture. Link's expression turned serious. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, "This time, you and Silverhand acted on your own without my consent, disrupting the plan that I and the think tank had agreed on last night, and also the rhythm of the series of actions in Chitu. The sudden change made us unable to react in time and delayed the battle. Link saw that the macaw's body was tensed up. It stopped acting cute and stared straight ahead, clearly waiting to be scolded. It was a seamless transition from being awarded to receiving training. "Do you know your mistake?" Link asked with a straight face, trying to suppress his laughter. The macaw tried its best to straighten its body and raise its wings to salute. Degree. The fat waist below the neck and above the claws trembled like jelly, shaking back and forth like waves. "You know you're wrong. I've deeply recognized my mistakes. I'm free and undisciplined, and I didn't abide by the organization's discipline. I've caused potential losses in Shandu and disrupted the organization's plans. I don't deserve to be rewarded. I want to deeply realize my mistakes and avoid making them again." Link's expression brightened and he nodded slightly. He was satisfied with the macaw's attitude. "However, although your and Silverhand's operation was extremely risky and disrupted our plan, the results were beyond our expectations. In this aspect, you and Silverhand also contributed. So, Yingluo, I'll count this as your contribution to offset your mistake. Do you agree?" The macaw nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, I totally agree. In the future, you must not be arrogant and impetuous, and do things steadily. I'm still very optimistic about your potential." The macaw's drooped expression rose again. After being praised, it immediately became smug. "Don't worry, boss. I won't let you down." Link nodded in satisfaction and exempted the Silverhand and the macaw from their voluntary work. This made Jin shed tears of gratitude. In less than half a day, Shandu had set up camp 5 kilometers away from Essia and built its defense. At the same time, the wolf cavalry and the fox hunting special forces began to patrol outside the fortifications. At this moment, the eyes of the city were red with killing. Most of the warlords were in a state of blood loss. The situation now seemed to be a tacit alliance to attack the current largest warlord, the Dao Tuo. What Shadow unit, what Chen Bing's 10 miles, not to mention the slum buffer between the two. What could he do now that he saw it? Should he stop? The mercenaries' eyes were bloodshot from all the killing. If any warlord dared to say that they were not going to fight anymore, these mercenaries who licked the blood on their blades would probably turn around and join the camp of other warlords. Everyone in the underground room of Dao Tuo's mansion was cleared out except for Dao Tuo and the Duke of Destruction. The Taoist priest's face was in a mess, and his clothes were torn in many places. The Duke of Destruction's mech also had a lot of bullet marks, ashes from the explosion, damaged armor plates, and faded spots. Boom, boom. The sound of the ground exploding was endless. In the 5-meter-deep basement, it turned into the sand on the roof and flowed down. Because of the Duke of Destruction's participation, Dao Tuo quickly reorganized his forces. Not only did he regain his original power, but the Duke of Destruction also won over a group of Sang Kun's subordinates with his reputation. In addition, the Duke was brave and good at fighting. The firepower of one person was equivalent to that of an army. In the chaos, he became the biggest warlord in Essia and occupied half of Essia's territory. But now, the small warlords who had suffered heavy losses began to come to a tacit understanding and aimed their muzzles at the Taoist priest, the largest force. Just now, Dao Tuo had personally led his troops out to resist a wave of attacks. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Dao Tuo stared at the Duke of Destruction. This child of his had died 15 years ago. Even though it was the first day they met and he had already encountered such a dangerous situation, he could not hide the affection in his eyes. The Duke was silent for a moment. He was conflicted. He couldn't guarantee what this decision would bring to the Wasteland Gang, Essia, and even his father, who he had just met today. Dao Tuo seemed to have seen the Duke of Destruction's struggle. His lips trembled, and his voice was a little hoarse as he said, "Child, don't worry and do what you want. Your decision is my decision. I didn't protect you when you were young, but now you've become the well-known Duke of Destruction. This is one of the few things that I can support you in, so let me be your strong backing for once." Tears welled up in the Duke of Destruction's eyes, and he choked on his sobs. The complicated emotions in his heart were like lava, ready to burst out at any moment. The Duke nodded heavily and stood up. His exhausted body seemed to have regained its strength. The linked machine gun on the mech's arm began to rotate and charge again, with a strong confidence on his face. The Taoist priest supported himself with the box under his butt and slowly got up. He reloaded the gun and sighed, "I didn't have the chance to go to the amusement park with you when I was young. Now that I've grown up, let's go together." N. Yingluo. A day later, a piece of news was sent back to Windhowl Castle. A surprise from Essia.